Hey everyone, Samia Khan here with your FOX10 News Now update. Hope you're having a wonderful Friday morning. We have a very exciting show today. Obviously, lots of news to talk about. It looks like the Squawk Box is talking right now because they're probably announcing this press conference that's starting any minute right now. It looks like the sheriff out in Oregon is going to speak about yesterday's tragic shooting at Umpqua Community College. As you know, many people were killed, many also injured after a gunman opened fire, shooting many people in this classroom at this community college. So we're going to hear from the sheriff. I believe at last count it was 9 people killed, 9 injured, but I'm sure the sheriff will give new updated numbers. I know we had so many different numbers floating around throughout the day yesterday because no one really had any official word. I know at the beginning we had heard as many as 15 killed, 20 injured, but I know that number has been reduced since then. So we will be going live to that press conference momentarily. I know President Barack Obama will be speaking again. He's holding a press conference at 12:30. We'll be carrying that live. And right after this press conference in Oregon ends, we'll actually lighten things up a bit. We have comedian Dave Coulier. He just wrapped up on the morning show. He'll be joining me on the News Now set, so you guys can ask him questions directly. Yes, Dave Coulier, you may know him as Joey from Full House. You may know him from some of his stand-up routines. You may know him from his signature catchphrase, "Cut It Out." So get those questions ready. We'll be talking to him momentarily. But first, I'm going to take you guys to Oregon. Looks like the press conference is all set up, and let's go ahead and watch.
Yeah. It's almost like just leave it on top. Yeah. She was nice seeing single.
That'll work, huh? We're still looking at a 10:30 start time. I'll give you a 2-minute heads up so you can get powered up and ready to go. I'm going to read off the names of the 2 people that are going to be talking this morning. Douglas County Sheriff John Hanlon, Hanlin. Douglas County Sheriff John Hanlon. And ATF, y'all know what that means, Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Celine, C-E-L-I-N-E-Z, as in zebra, C-E-L-I-N-E-Z as in zebra, Nunez, N-U-N-E-Z. Those are the 2 people who will be speaking this morning. C-E-L-I-N-E-Z, as in zebra. She is the ATF Assistant Special Agent in Charge. Don't have that. She is heading up the weapons investigation.
Will they be taking questions?
Sheriff, and she will be taking a short amount of questions. But as you can imagine, they are in the midst of this investigation, so there will be a limited amount of Q&A time at the end of it. Okay? Thank you. Thank you.
Battery's dying.
Yeah, I gotta grab mine, but we're getting interference on mine, so I might just have to.
All right, guys, as you heard from that official, we won't be starting this news conference until 10:30. So what I'm going to do is play a story from you from Fox National. This was sent to us this morning, giving us an update on the shooting. All right, guys, as you heard from that official, we won't. That's awkward. You guys can hear the playback of my voice. Let's go ahead and listen now.
Devastation on an Oregon college campus as a man armed with at least 4 guns opens fire on a classroom full of students.
We need love and compassion and healing, and it's going to take a long time.
People in the town of Roseburg are in mourning following a mass shooting at Umpqua Community College. Police say the violence, which erupted Thursday morning, could have been worse.
We do know that we have at least 2 heroic officers who responded into the building within minutes and exchanged gunfire with the suspect.
The gunman, who reportedly demanded his victims state their religion before firing, has been identified as 26-year-old Chris Harper Mercer.
People were running in every direction. I ran to a hill. Everybody was just running everywhere.
Shocked. Shocked is all I can say. It's been a devastating day. Devastating for me and my family.
Hours after the shooting, police could be seen searching the suspect's apartment, looking for clues as to what may have led up to the violence.
He lived above us. My daughter has personally heard confrontations going on, which worried her enough to want to go upstairs and ask what was going on.
In the wake of the tragedy, President Obama is calling for stricter gun laws, saying it's not enough to offer prayers for the victims.
It does nothing to prevent this carnage from being inflicted someplace else in America. We collectively are answerable to those families who lose their loved ones because of our inaction.
At this time, it's not clear where or how the suspect got the guns involved in the shooting. Meantime, the college will be closed until Monday. In Los Angeles, Will Carr, Fox News.
All right, guys, that was just the story sent to us from Fox National. It looks like we are still waiting for that press conference. And obviously yesterday was a very tragic day up in the Roseburg area of Oregon. Umpqua Community College, where a 26-year-old man opened fire. Authorities have not released any information in terms of a verdict, but we hopefully will be getting more details during this upcoming press conference at 10:30.
Amen. Go up and talk at the microphone.
Microphone test, 1, 2, 3. Microphone test, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
It's not working.
Amen. One more time.
Sorry about that. Microphone testing, 1, 2, 3. Microphone testing, 1, 2, 3. Everybody test your microphones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Microphone test.
Oh, wait a minute. You're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah. That's a weird. I wonder why they do it. Maybe because see how many antennas they have.
That's good.
Oh my God. Cider or what? Said you would. You turned me to.
Darren, let me know when you're ready.
Did you really?
Getting anything off of that? Go ahead. Sorry. No worries.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Test microphone levels 1, 2, 3. Just move this guy. I don't want to move him back.
Anybody else out here?
There's a shelf down here. You might be able to push it back. I'm afraid if I sit down too long, I will fall asleep. Too short. I think I'm on 90 minutes of sleep. Last night after the vigil, I'm like, I get some stuff. I wrote a lot of my shorter stuff, you know, it's like, so that I could work. And then I ended up doing a thing I could do. That was kind of, they were talking about stuff that I've never, I don't know, any connection to it. And I shot him an email, it's like, yeah, I'd like to read this stuff. That was... Well, my original plan for last night, like pre-10:48, was 10:38 was my wife and my daughter had to go to Metro for something after school, and I looked at okay, maybe they're going to be somewhere. I could get home, have a glass of wine, chill I heard the first thing on the scanner, I thought, mentally I heard shot fired by UCC, and honestly, mentally I thought, oh, hunting season starts Saturday, so these guys have to sprint around with these guns. You know. Oh, well, yeah, we had Ashley was working, yeah, she was working on, oh, okay. Well, she's like, this morning she's like, well, she didn't fit the story. I'm like, you can work on it, but it ain't happening until Monday. I had an LNG story on Jordan Cove. All done, I was waiting for one line. It's like, okay, that's gonna be Monday. Forget it. Well, and I still don't know what I'm doing at 12:30. I might get a phone call. I had the governor on.
Justin, you back there?
In the morning. I had the governor on the morning hour just for about 50 minutes. But yesterday I was going to have John Sinjo.
Check, check, check. Mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Check, 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 check. Check, check, check. Mic check. 1, 2. You hear that? Got me, Justin? Check, check, check. I'm from Kentucky, that's why I sound weird. Shit.
Yeah, we're actually, I've got one of the guys ready to see you again. Yeah, we can take it, you guys, like, why you trying to do this? We'll just talk out right there. Well, you know, we yesterday, when he was out there for that, right. He was on with you guys right up with whoever, Brad was on, and somebody else here, one of us, the person was like, I'm actually texted him. I didn't know this was going to because we originally just asked him to do it. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. Too many questions like, okay, maybe I better not keep texting because he just never knows. But no, that was wild yesterday. We had one of our guys.
All right, guys, again, we are waiting for this press conference to start. We'll be getting an update on the Oregon shooting. I'm going to play some video for you guys now so you guys can see the scene from yesterday. I do have some updated information for you. So in case you needed an update in terms of what exactly took place yesterday, I have that for you right here. Again, we are waiting for the press conference to start. This is some video from yesterday. Obviously a very chaotic scene. Here's some video of the aerials that were shot yesterday. As far as things we know that the suspect was a 26-year-old man who walked into a morning writing class at that community college and opened fire. He was armed with multiple guns. I believe he was armed with 4 guns. And according to witnesses, the attacker demanded to know the students' religion before shooting them. The gunman was described as a conservative atheist. According to students in the classroom next door, they heard several shots, one right after the next. And that's when their teacher told them to leave. They started running, going any way, running to the center of the campus, avoiding the building. We know at least 9 people were killed and 7 others wounded. Again, this is Umpqua Community College. This is about 180 miles south of Portland. This is the worst mass shooting in recent Oregon history. And some of the chatter yesterday was the fact that there's only one security guard on campus, and that security guard is not armed. The former college president, Joe Olson, who retired in June, said, "I suspect this is going to start a discussion across the country about how community colleges prepare themselves for events like this." Now, the killer was identified as Chris Harper Mercer, according to a government official who was not authorized to speak publicly.
About a normal level right now.
He provided the name on the condition of anonymity. Again, officials did not want to name the shooter because they do not want to give him the attention he likely sought. As of right now, we don't know if there was any motive. The killer had body armor and was armed with 3 pistols, a rifle, and 5 additional magazines. The guns included a 9mm Glock pistol and a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson, both traced to the suspect. The gunman is not believed to have had a criminal history. According to investigators, they may believe that he's a student at the college because a receipt found at the scene showed he purchased textbooks from the campus bookstore 2 days before the shooting. Now, he lived in an apartment complex nearby. That's where investigators found a number of firearms. So in his apartment complex, they found even more guns. And those details about the number and type of guns are going to be released a little bit later on. We don't have the details so far. According to a neighbor, the gunman seemed really unfriendly, and he would sit by himself in the dark in the balcony with this little light. And according to that neighbor, this gunman lived with his mother at that apartment, and apparently the mother was crying her eyes out on Thursday. Now, according to social media profiles linked to the gunman, those profiles suggest that the gunman was fascinated by the IRA, frustrated by traditional organized religion, and he had tracked other mass shootings. Now, some of the things I saw online if they are indeed written by him, were blog posts from Mercer commenting on the shooting, specifically the Virginia shooting that took place a few weeks ago, the shooting of the reporter. In that blog post, he made note that Vester Flanagan was a relatively unknown name, and then once he committed this act, his name was everywhere and he was known. So he did acknowledge the fact that when you do commit these sorts of crimes, the world now knows your name. So it's interesting to look at it like that. If someone who's already near suicidal wants to leave with a specific, with, I guess, their name known, this may be a route they choose, unfortunately. He also had a MySpace page still set up. It showed just 2 friends. In addition to the MySpace page, he also at least had one online dating profile, a torrents streaming account, and like I said, a blog. Again, the blog referenced multiple shootings, and according to the torrents streaming site, he downloaded several horror films and a documentary on a mass shooting at Sandy Hook. According to these alleged blog posts, the post urged readers to watch the online footage of Vester Flanagan shooting the 2 journalists on live TV in Virginia, saying that people should see it. I think he even used the term, it was good video. He also spend time in another blog post talking about materialism. All right, guys, it looks like this news conference is starting.
Good morning, everyone. This morning I want to start with the victims and the families. We have teams of investigators and victim specialists working with each of the families. The purpose is to help facilitate the next of kin notifications and to provide counseling services, as well as to ensure that each and every one of them and the families receives the highest level of support. These families are currently living through the nightmare in the most personal way possible. I would ask that the media respect their privacy and let them grieve in their own way. As notifications happen, we hope to share their names and a little bit more about them in future press conferences. On to the issues related to the campus. If your car is still parked on the campus, you need to meet at the Douglas County Fairgrounds today at 3 p.m. At that time, buses will be there to take you back to the campus to retrieve your car. You should bring photo ID. If you cannot find your photo ID and you believe you have left it at the campus, check in with an officer at the college and let them know, and they will assist you in attempting to retrieve it from one of the buildings. There are also mental health counselors stationed at the fairgrounds, including counselors being provided by the Community Health Alliance. Students and staff in need of assistance are strongly encouraged to seek out that help. Also, in talking with the Umpqua Community College partners this morning, our current understanding is that they intend to reopen the campus early next week. Please stay tuned for more information on that. We expect that the medical examiner will release the name of the shooter sometime later today. Again, you will not hear anyone from this law enforcement operation use his name. I continue to believe that those media and community members who publicize his name will only glorify his horrific actions. And eventually, this will only serve to inspire future shooters. At this time, I would like to introduce ATF Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Salinas Nunez.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Salinas Nunez. Like the Sheriff said, I'm the Assistant Special Agent in Charge for the Seattle Field Division, and I wanted to provide some information on the weapons we've had in custody so far. So far, we've recovered 13 weapons. Out of those 13 weapons, we currently have in custody 6 were recovered at the school. So far, we've recovered 13 weapons. Out of those 13 weapons, we currently have in custody 6 were recovered at the school. 7 were recovered at the shooter's residence. All 14 have been traced to a federal firearms dealer. They are all at different stages currently in the tracing process. 8 of the 14 have been traced to first trace purchasers. 7 have been purchased by the shooter or a family member, all within the last 3 years. In addition to the weapons recovered, we also were able to recover a flank jacket, was recovered lying next to the rifle at the school. The jacket had steel plates along with 5 magazines. An additional amount of ammunition was also recovered at the apartment. And that's all we have at this moment. I also want to thank our Seattle, our Phoenix Field Division, and our North Carolina Field Division, and our LA Field Division for working diligently in obtaining all these tracing information for us.
Did you say black jacket?
Yes. We have 14 currently. It was 14 weapons. One of them he actually traded and backed to the store for one of the firearms that were recovered at the school. They were all purchased legally, yes.
Were they purchased locally?
Not all of them.
But they were all purchased legally by the shooter?
Some were purchased by the shooter, some were not purchased by the shooter.
Folks, I'll open it up for some questions here at the end of this as well, if you let us get through the rest of this real quick. This is a very active investigation still. We have a lot of resources committed. They were committed all through the night, conducting follow-up investigations. And I just want to remind everyone that we have a toll-free number set up to collect tips from those in the community. So if anybody in the community has any information about this incident, or if you have any video or photographs relevant to the incident, we ask you to please call 1-800-CALL-FBI. Choose option 7. I also want to remind everyone that we have a number of mental health resources available beyond those at the fairgrounds and beyond those at the college. Anyone who is feeling anxious about this incident, again, I encourage you to seek counseling help. It is available. You can find a listing of resources on our press releases. So at this time, I'll be willing to answer a couple of questions.
Sheriff, can you confirm this is the photograph of the shooter? Give us absolute confirmation of that, please.
I cannot.
Sheriff, what's the magnitude of the cache of weapons and the ammunition? And should one person, is it normal for one person to have this amount of weaponry?
In Oregon, I mean, this is a hunting state, and firearms are popular in most households, yes.
Sheriff, what's the connection with the shooter at the school?
That I do not know. That is part of the investigation that's ongoing. We don't have information on that.
Have there been any notes recovered? There have also been reports suggesting that perhaps the gunman gave someone a flash drive with information. Any information about either of those two things?
Again, you know, we are in the middle of this investigation, and any information pertaining to that, it would be irresponsible of me to comment at this time.
There are reports that you targeted people because they were Christian.
Can you confirm the number of fatalities at this moment?
The number, I'm sorry.
Fatalities.
Yes, there is a total of 10 fatalities. That number hasn't changed. That includes the shooter.
Sheriff, you've begun to come under attack yourself for being a strong Second Amendment advocate. How do you feel about the politicalization of this tragedy?
Well, like I've said numerous times already this morning, my focus right now is on getting this investigation completed and taking care of the victims and the families of the victims, and so now is not an appropriate time to have those conversations.
Last question.
The shooter, it would certainly make it much easier for us to focus on the victims if you knew who some of the victims were. You must have notified some next of kin now. Surely you could release some of those names.
Regarding the name of the shooter?
No, the names of victims. If you want us to focus on the victims, we have to know who the victims are.
Right.
Could you name them now? Name some of them, those who you've been able to identify next of kin?
I cannot. As I have mentioned before, this is a mass casualty incident, and there's protocols in place that require that those notifications be authorized by the Oregon State Medical Examiner's Office, and we hope that those notifications will come hopefully by the end of today. But at this particular point in time, I am not able to answer that.
No more questions.
No more questions. Why does this keep happening in America? Why does this keep happening here?
Can you confirm Christians were targeted?
No more questions, please. I have some information for those of you in this room that you need to know. At 11:30, outside this building in front of the fire bays, the governor will be holding a press availability with the Oregon Congressional delegation. That's 11:30 outside in front of the fire bays. We expect to have another press briefing in this room later this afternoon. When we get the time set, we will post that to Flash Alert and our Twitter account. Thank you. Corporal.
All right, guys, so that was the official press conference. As we just heard, the governor will be holding a press conference at 11:30 in about an hour. Early this morning, Mercy Medical Center, one of the hospitals treating many of the patients, held a press conference. It was very early in the morning. I believe it was 6 o'clock our time. So I assume many of you guys missed it, so I'm going to play that for you now here on News Now.
The victims and the families, I know it's a very trying time for them. Also, we want to make sure that we provide support for our friends and family also out at UCC. You know, many of our employees actually were trained and educated out at UCC and taking care of our patients. Also, there's been a lot of outpouring of support that we've had from our other local hospitals here in Oregon as well as throughout the country. But I think probably even just as important is the team that took care of the patients that came yesterday. I got to tell you that the Mercy team of nurses, doctors, clinicians, support staff was absolutely phenomenal. You know, on an annual basis, we take care of 50,000 people in our emergency department. We see many, many traumas throughout the year. I can assure you our team was ready. They were prepared. There was compassion. There was caring. There was professionalism. For all of us here in Roseburg, we couldn't be more proud of the hospital team that we had. We also had 10 people that came to us at the hospital. Dr. Jason Grays, our Chief Medical Officer, is going to give you a little bit of update on those patients that were here.
Jason Gray, Chief Medical Officer and anesthesiologist. So yesterday we received 10 victims from the UCC shooting. Of those, 3 were transferred quickly to a higher level of care. 2 were treated and released. 4 underwent operative intervention here. Of those, 1 has already been discharged, and 1 will likely be discharged today. And there was 1 that was deceased in the emergency room at arrival. The 3 that remain are expected to recover well, and at this point remain in stable critical condition.
And it's a small town. How do you train for a mass casualty incident like this?
You know, we have community-wide training events for this exact situation as part of the Oregon trauma system, or a level 3 trauma system, and we integrate with the level 2 and the level 1 trauma hospitals throughout the state.
Can you give us any indication on who these victims are? Young, old, male, female, anything like that?
You know, they're mixed, male and female at this point, of varying ages.
And we just want to honor the privacy for the patients, so that's all we're going to provide for you today.
The age span I would say was on the younger side.
Doctor, if we could say again, there were 10 patients admitted here, and just explain that again if you just went over.
Sure. We received 10 patients from the UCC. Of those, 3 were transferred to a higher level of care for services which we don't have available. 2 of them were treated and released from the emergency room. 4 of them required operating room procedures. 1 patient was deceased in the emergency room. Of the 4 that underwent surgical intervention, 1 was discharged yesterday. 1 will likely be discharged today. And the remaining 2, 1 is in critical condition and 1 is in stable condition at this point.
Can you say what type of injuries?
All of the injuries were gunshot wounds to abdomen, thorax, head, extremities at this point.
Can you explain that there's a disparity between the sheriff's office saying there were 7 people wounded and you're saying there were 10 people admitted?
I cannot explain that. I know we received 10 patients in total. That's the information that I can vouch for.
Talk about the challenges dealing with when you have so many people coming all at once. How do you respond?
From a medical standpoint, we're trained for this. Obviously, it's an overwhelming situation, but we practice it. The outpouring of the community, and the outpouring of our staff coming in on their days off, retired physicians coming in, nurses coming in, staff coming in. One of the challenges, honestly, is coordinating support for the friends, the family of the victims, and coordinating information. It's been very difficult.
Dr. Gray, we've heard time and time again that everyone knows somebody who's been impacted by this shooting. Has this personally impacted you as well?
I have staff members who have been impacted, and I know at this point we do not know all of the names of the victims.
But for you personally, this is your town, to see this happen here, and just trying to, how do you cope with helping these people and dealing with the emotion of this at the same time?
That's been one of our biggest challenges. Is supporting not only the patients, the families, but our own caregivers, as Kelly mentioned. Yesterday was a challenging day. The days and the weeks to come will be the most challenging. And how do we continue to support our staff, the family, the victims here?
Are you saying you don't know all the victims' names even as you guys have been taking care of them?
We do not know all the victims' names that are out there at the college.
Can you update, or do you know the condition of the victims up at Peace Health in Springfield at all? You've been in contact with them?
I have not been in contact with them this morning.
Okay, but you said they were the more severe, more life-threatening injuries?
The patients were transferred to Peace Health that required services which we don't have available, typically neurosurgery.
The 1 person that's deceased, is it in addition to the 10 that were announced yesterday? Or?
I cannot vouch for
we
those
don't know
numbers.
if that's one of the 10 or not. We don't know that.
But again, all 4 here that were admitted here are expected to survive and do well. One's already out, the other one leaving today.
Correct.
In your background, doctor, have you seen something of this nature before?
In a small community like this is the first time I've seen it. Larger facilities. It really shows up. Do you want to go further away?
No, I want to get the pressure.
Yep, we'll be ready.
No, let's keep the pressure in the background, or do you want to keep the medical center in the background?
What's that?
The pressure or medical center?
Medical center. Let's do medical center.
For those of you wondering when this press conference took place, this took place at about 6 a.m. Arizona time this morning. Doctors giving an update on the condition of those people taken to Mercy Medical Center.
Stop.
level 1 or level 2 trauma center.
That was in Springfield that they were transferred?
Correct.
Peace Health Sacred Heart Medical Center, they sent out a news release to us last night saying 2 are listed as critical and 1 in serious condition. Have you heard that as well?
That would fit with the description at the time of transfer.
Do either of you know anyone personally at the school or have any family members of your own at the school?
Well, I think all of us have, different family members and friends that either work out there or are students. Obviously we don't know who the victims are at this time, but I will assure you every single person here at the hospital in our community will be impacted by somebody out at UCC.
All right, guys, I'm going to take you right now to Tempe. We're going to go back to some local news for a bit. I know we'll be talking more about the Oregon shooting in just a few minutes. Celeste Rodriguez from the morning show expected to join me in about 10 or 15 minutes. We'll be talking about the unfortunate tragedy out in Oregon, but we are getting these live images right now from SkyFox, so I thought I'd show you them. This is a car fire currently underway in Tempe, northwest of 101 and Warner. In terms of the specific area, car on fire. Don't have any additional information right now, but we are getting these live images in, courtesy of SkyFox. If you're wondering where in Tempe this car fire is taking place, let me show you. And keep that fire in the upper right-hand corner while I zoom in. 8400 South River Parkway right here. So you can see it's just near 101 here, north of Warner. So the northwest corner basically of Warner and Loop 101. You guys are familiar with the area. I'm going to go ahead and get a normal view so you guys get an idea of where it is relative to the rest of the valley. So there you have it. That is where the car fire is. We're going to go back to these live images of the car fire. Again, this is a car fire in Tempe. Again, guys, we are looking at live images of this car fire in Tempe. Again, we don't have much information, but we do know it is near Warner and Loop 101. These are live images courtesy of Skyfox. If I get any additional information, I will let you guys know here on Fox 10 News Now. All right, guys, so just a quick update on this car fire in Tempe. This is coming from Tempe's fire department. They said we've been on scene for over an hour without being able to extinguish the single car fire. We are not sure what keeps igniting the leaking gasoline. Firefighting foam has not been effective up until this point. We may need to let the fire exhaust the fuel supply at this point. There are no exposures or injuries. So that is the update from Tempe Fire. Again, guys, these are live images coming in from Tempe of that car fire. If you guys are interested in exactly where in Tempe it is right there, 8400 South River Parkway. You can see it is just west of Loop 101. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out there so you guys have a rough idea of where it is relative to downtown Phoenix right here. This part of Tempe, 8400 South River Parkway. From this faraway shot, you can see just the smoke that is continuing to enter the air as a result of this car fire. Like Tempe Fire said, they've been trying to fight this single car fire, again, one car on fire, for over an hour, but still can't manage to extinguish the flames. They have no idea what keeps igniting the leaking gasoline. And that is the update we got recently from the Tempe Fire Department. I know some of you in the chat room wondering how this fire started. We don't actually have an answer for that yet. According to Tempe Fire, until they're able to actually look at the truck, they say they will not be able to tell how the fire started. Again, Tempe Fire saying that they've been on scene for over an hour trying to extinguish this single car fire, but unable to. They have no idea what keeps igniting the leaking gasoline. Firefighting foam has not been effective up until this point, so it looks like the firefighters standing on the side, not really fighting this fire at this point. According to Tempe Fire, they did say that they may need to just let the fire exhaust the fuel supply at this point. Fortunately, there was no one injured. All right, guys, it looks like not much more is going to happen in terms of just watching this car fire. As we just learned, Tempe Fire is going to just let the flames keep burning until all the gasoline is used up. If we get any updates, if we ever find out how this car fire started, we'll let you guys know here on News Now. But in the meantime, I want to get back to today's top story. It's been the story since yesterday morning. It's such an unfortunate thing. We learned about it here on News Now just after 11 o'clock, so it's pretty much been 24 hours since this shooting occurred, since we first learned about it, and we're learning more and more details. We just heard a press conference about 30 minutes ago, and I know many more press conferences are scheduled. I know the governor is expected to speak in about a half an hour. I know that hospital representatives are scheduled to speak. I know President Obama is holding a press conference at 12:30, so there's a lot going on. I'm going to play a few clips for you. These were sent to me from Fox National, from our local Fox affiliates in Oregon, and this one is called College Shooting Witnesses Reacting. So, oh, just kidding. I'm not going to play it because it looks like the doctors are speaking now. Mercy Medical Center.
Update on the conditions of these shooting victims for yesterday's college shooting in Oregon against Asians.
All right, guys, it looks like we're about to get that feed in right now. There we go.
They are all three stable at this time. We've downgraded one to a lower level of care from critical. She is going to be transferred out of the ICU today and to the ward for the remainder of her hospitalization. The other two remain intubated, sedated. One has a significant head injury, but clinically she is doing well. I think from a standpoint she's going to recover from this injury. She has many orthopedic injuries that need to be addressed yet, and will probably return to the operating room one or two more times to have those addressed. The final patient is in the OR this morning, undergoing orthopedic repair of some broken bones secondary to the gunshot wounds. She had a laparotomy done yesterday to look at the injuries in her abdomen and is doing well from that standpoint. Any questions at this time?
Are you releasing names of these patients?
We will not be releasing the names of these patients. We're going to leave that up, I think, either to the local police department or down in Roseburg.
What is it specifically that you offered up here? We were talking to the folks at the hospital at Mercy down there this morning, and they said they had to come up here because they needed neurosurgery, something, expertise that they couldn't offer down there. Is it safe to assume, or is it a fact that all three had head injuries? They were all had gunshot wounds to the head?
No, we had one with a gunshot wound to the head, one with a gunshot wound to the spine. I think, first of all, we need to talk about Mercy. They did a fantastic job yesterday in providing the initial care to these patients, triaging them. I don't know what they took care of down there personally. I haven't had a chance to talk with them, but the way they packaged the patients up and prepared them for transport and got them to us in a timely manner was fantastic. All the patients were hemodynamically stable and had appropriate interventions prior to being transferred to us. The most critical one was the one with the head injury. We knew they were coming. We actually activated our mass casualty protocols here at Sacred Heart Riverbend. With the number of potential injuries that we were expecting, I think I received the first phone call yesterday morning about 10:30. I was actually in the OR at that time, operating on another patient. Received a phone call from the trauma surgeon down at Mercy, who let me know the status and what to expect. At that point, we activated our trauma, our mass casualty protocols. We actually had 63 personnel in the ER by 11 o'clock. We needed 60. We activated 4 bays, 4 trauma teams, which consisted of an ER physician, a trauma surgeon, anesthesiologist, 2 nurses, a phlebotomist, a scribe, 2 med techs, a chaplain. And so it was a great response from the community. We had ER physicians, anesthesiologists, surgeons who were not even on call in or text in or even come in to see what we needed. We had two neurosurgeons which we contacted personally, letting them know that we needed their assistance. We had 2 vascular surgeons come down to help out in case there were vascular injuries, and of course orthopedics. And then we had I think 8 trauma surgeons, general surgeons involved in the care yesterday.
How many hours do you think you spent in the operating room with these victims?
Dr. Littman took care of the one who received a gunshot wound to the chest and abdomen, and he can speak directly to how long he spent in that, and I'll just let him talk to that.
So in general, from the time that all of the patients arrived to the time that they got to the operating room is variable based on their injuries. For the 2 that were the most critical, they were out of the ER and into the operating room in 30 minutes or less, just depending on their injuries. The surgery that I was in took about 4 hours. The operating room was being utilized by one of the 3 patients for probably 6 or 7 hours total. But that was, again, spread out based on who needed to be in the OR at what point and how many surgeons ended up needing to be involved. In our operating room, we had 3 anesthesiologists helping get her ready for surgery, cardiothoracic surgeon evaluating the chest injury. At the end of the case, the orthopedic surgeon came in and evaluated the extremity injuries that needed to be evaluated. And so, it was a tremendous team effort as far as getting everything that we could get done at the same time. And making sure, of course, that she was still doing well under anesthesia and ready to continue doing well.
Were any of the patients alert and talking when they arrived?
Yes. The young woman that suffered the gunshot wound to the back was alert-oriented and talking.
Was she giving any kind of information about where she felt pain, where she was shot, anything that helped you with her case?
Yes. Her physical exam, she cooperated with that, was able to participate and help us diagnose the extent of her injuries. It was a little more relaxed with her care because the injuries were not life-threatening. Of course, life, limb, and eyesight is how we triage patients with respect to who gets intervention first. Hers were not life-threatening. The bullet wound was low enough that she didn't have a lot of neurologic deficit. So we were able to take our time, get a computerized tomography scan of her back, assess where the bullet was, had neurosurgery come down, evaluate her, had the discussion about the benefit risk of an MRI, given the fact that the bullets today are all metal. We can't use an MRI any longer to assess that. He did a neurologic exam, made the determination that he felt that the bullet was impinging on the nerve and needed to be removed. Took her to the OR, I think probably 2 hours after she arrived, and took the bullet out. I was in the PACU, I think around 10 o'clock last night, and she was coming out of surgery at about that time also.
Did she say anything about the shooting?
I did not talk to her about that this morning. I purposely avoided that topic with her. I did ask her if she wanted to speak to a psychiatrist. We will consult psychiatry for all the patients once they're alert and oriented enough. I do know the nurse spoke with her and gave me some information about her mental status at this point. I can tell you that she has been affected greatly by this event in her life.
The patient you say is still in critical and went to ICU, is that the person who was injured in the head?
There are two still in the ICU, and they're both still considered critical. The one with the gunshot wound in the head is the more critical of the two. But from a clinical standpoint, she looks very good this morning. Okay, we look at brain perfusion is what we're interested in, because the more oxygen we get to the brain, the better off they are. She has good perfusion pressures to her brain this morning. They had to do a craniectomy to relieve the pressure on the head. She looks very good this morning. I'm optimistic she will, of course, have some deficit. What they will be, we don't know. Time will tell as we are able to wake her up, take her off the ventilator, get a better neurologic exam on her where she can participate. We'll have a better idea.
But again, all three expected to survive.
At this point, yes.
When you said some deficit, can you expand on that a little bit?
Based on site of injury, I mean, if you break down brain injury into blunt versus penetrating, the war data shows that penetrating injuries do better than blunt with their ability to return to the community, be fully functional. It's a left-sided brain injury, so she'll have either some motor or potentially maybe some expressive or receptive aphasia. In other words, she won't be able to speak or she won't be able to understand somebody talking to her. And we don't know. I mean, it's just that general area. She has, some benefit in that she's young. Young people do better than older people because they can remodel, recreate, or create new tracks of neurons.
How old is that patient? Like 18-year-old?
I don't know. Yeah. Two are younger than the third. I don't know how old the third one is, but she's a little bit older.
Were you here 17 years ago?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, so none of you people up there were.
No.
Some of you look too young. Okay.
Well, what's it like? I mean, you guys see trauma all the time. You help people through these things. You're surgeons. You're in there in the OR. To see these people coming from Roseburg, so many in Roseburg that were killed, injured. And what is it like for you guys? Do you have to turn a switch off in your brain in order to do the job?
Yeah. I mean, I get emotional when I first get the phone call. It bothers me, and then I have a job to do. I get into a state where I don't think about the impact on the patient. I think about what are the injuries, what do I need to do. It's part of my training. I identify those things that are going to kill the patient in a quick manner. The number one cause of death from trauma is hemorrhage, and that's the first thing I'm concerned about. Number two is going to be central nervous system injury. What kind of injury do they have? What kind of injuries might they have to the central nervous system? We use the American College of Surgeons Advanced Trauma Life Support Protocols. Dr. Littman did a fellowship in trauma critical care. My experience is military. I had 4 deployments as a combat surgeon and one as a commander to Afghanistan and Iraq. Dr. Notenboom has trauma training in his residency. So it's part of what we do. You focus on the job. In these mass casualty situations, it bothers me when I get home. I mean, I've gone home and cried. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand it. But hopefully, we're going to be there for these patients when it happens. It's going to happen again. It happened here 17 years ago. It's happened this year. It happens, in the U.S. So the medical community is there to help when this happens. And I think there's a lot of great Learning has come out of the most recent war with respect to trauma care. The DoD has a great collaborative program with the American College of Surgeons and bringing all that data back to civilian care in the U.S. The state of Oregon has gone to establishing the level of care in this state to be that equal to what the American College of Surgeons expects. And they work in a collaborative manner between each of the areas in the state to help us communicate with each other and provide care in that first golden hour so that we can help our patients get to a surgeon and get the care that they need.
You talked about the victims being well cared for in transport. How were they transferred here, and how long did it take between the shooting and them arriving here?
Well, the shootings were around 10:30 in the morning. I think our first patient arrived around 1 o'clock. A
little before, I think.
Yeah. 2 of them came intubated and on a ventilator. Because of the risk of hypothermia in flight, because they came in a helicopter via life flight, transport time's about 20 minutes from Roseburg to here. They all get packaged up in kind of a cocoon type of wrap to keep their temperature high, keep all the heat that the body makes in, because it's very hard to keep the back of a helicopter warm. And even in the summer, you're at risk of hypothermia.
Did they go to Mercy and Roseburg first?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, the one with the head injury spent very little time there, was then transported to us, I think, almost immediately after the injury was recognized. And I think Reach, was it Reach, brought him to us yesterday? Both. Reach and Life Flight brought the patients to us. And they do a fantastic job.
Any guess on how long they'll be here? All 3 of them? I know they're different conditions.
Well, when the patients ask me that question, I tell them I don't know. I don't get that crystal ball, but I tell them their discharge criteria. Okay, I suspect the one that's going to have, with the neurologic injury, the greatest neurologic injury, will be with us the longest. We will be able to probably send her to a rehab center when she is, able to eat. We have good pain control oral agents, and she's had good return of bowel function. So once all those criteria are met, then we start talking. And all along the hospital stay, we look at the goals for discharge on a daily basis. We do trauma team rounds every week with social work, occupational therapy, physical therapy, nutritional medicine, and talk about the global picture of care for the patient. And where are they going to go? When are they going to go? Where's the best place for them to go? And of course, that we talk to the family about that also. I would suspect anywhere from, a week to 4 to 5 weeks, is the time span we're going to see. And it's going to vary from patient to patient.
Was there anything that was learned from this event that maybe was unexpected that you would want to share with, future hospitals if this sort of thing would happen? Is there something that is...
We always do debriefs. We'll do a hot wash here locally. We'll do a hot wash with Mercy through Dr. Littman in his role as the director with it's called the ATAB, it's the Area Trauma Advisory Board, which is part of how the state divides up trauma. There's 7 area trauma advisory boards. Dr. Littman chairs our ATAB, and he communicates with those that are around us. The ones to the south is ATAB 5, Area Trauma Advisory Board 5. And so we do hot washes. We talk about patient transfers. Even when it's not a mass casualty, when they need to transfer a patient to us, there's a great collaborative effort between, our trauma team and Mercy's trauma team.
So there's information that will be passed on in the future?
Yes. Yeah. Part of trauma care is the PI process, the process improvement. We evaluate every patient. We look to where we did something that wasn't quite as good as we wanted it to be. And that's peer reviewed and talked about amongst not only the trauma surgeons, but the ER physicians, the orthopedic surgeons, and the neurosurgeons. And we do that on a monthly basis. These cases will be peer reviewed. We will look at them critically to find out what could we have done better. what will we do better the next time.
We were told yesterday that there would be more than 3 victims coming here to Riverbend, and also included the mail. Any word on what happened to those victims? Are they still on Roseburg? Or?
Well, the initial word we got was up to 7, then it was downgraded to 5. Then we were told that 1 died in the operating room, and the last one, they said they were going to keep down at Roseburg. So.
Any update on the hospital's blood supply, or are you guys still in good shape?
We're fine. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that is a wrap on that press conference. I know the governor of Oregon is scheduled to speak at 11:30, so in about 10 minutes we will be going live to the governor of Oregon. In the meantime, I want to play this story for you of some of the witnesses speaking to our Fox affiliate out in Oregon.
This was just the 4th day of the new term here at UCC, and halfway through their 10 a.m. class, some students tell me they heard gunshots and then they ran for their lives.
You read about it in newspapers, you see it on TV, it is just so much more different when you're there.
19-year-old Hannah Miles's first week in college was supposed to be exciting and enlightening, but at 10:38 a.m. it became pure terror. She was in writing class at Snyder Hall when she says everyone heard a loud cracking sound in the classroom right next door. Hannah's teacher went to check it out.
So she knocks on it and she said, "Hey, is everyone okay in there?" And then as soon as she said that, it was just rapid fire over and over and over again. You could hear the people, you could hear them moving and crying.
After those 4 or 5 shots, we realized, okay, that's gunfire, and everybody bolted.
Brady Winder was in Hannah's class and says confusion quickly became chaos.
People were running in every direction. I ran to a hill. Everybody was just running everywhere.
What was going through your mind?
I hope I make it. I was just praying that I would make it.
Classrooms went into lockdown as police arrived, a scenario that Renee Bovee has been through before. She was at Roseburg High School in 2006, just a few feet away from a 14-year-old gunman when he shot a classmate.
That left me to have some mild PTSD, which unfortunately was triggered during this event. But luckily I had a gentleman who I was in lockdown with who kept me calm and safe.
Students were bussed over to the fairgrounds where they met Red Cross volunteers and reunited with relatives. And Hannah says she knows she's in good hands.
Yeah, this community in UCC suffered a great loss, but we're going to be okay because that's just how we are.
And a few of the students tell me that military veterans in their classes took the lead in recognizing that that was gunfire and then helping people to get out quickly. In Roseburg tonight, Jamie Wilson, Fox 12 Oregon.
So today I just walked into class. It was kind of like an off day for some reason. I just didn't know why it felt weird. And so it was only about 20 minutes into class, and I heard like a loud bang, and I was like, that's kind of weird. So I looked over, and there's no textbook. I thought maybe it'd be a textbook on the floor or a table or desk ramming into a wall, but it was kind of loud, so it was like, what is going on? So then I looked out the window, and there was a couple girls running, like sprinting away from the building, and then I hear screaming after that first gunshot. And then I looked out and I saw the people running, and I said to the teacher, we need to get out of here right now. And then we heard the second and third gunshots, and she had opened the door, and before I knew it, I was already at the student center because I booked it over there. And I stayed in the financial aid area for the lockdown and stayed there until we were told that we could come out of that spot, but we had to stay in the building that we were in. We couldn't leave the building at all. I don't know what to feel right now. I'm terrified. I'm stressed out about it. I was so excited to start college here, and it was going great for the first couple days, and then this happens, and it's just like I don't want to go back there for a long time. But I don't know how to feel about this right now. It's so scary. Yeah, there's a friend of ours. Her son goes to the school, and she hasn't been able to contact him at all. And he hasn't contacted her. So we're still trying to find him for them because they're 2 hours away. They're near Medford, so they wouldn't be able to get here quick enough. So we're trying to find him for them and let them know what's going on. We've all joined up together. It was a very awful time for everyone, so we were all able to cope with each other, and some people still are kind of not knowing what's going on. Lots of people are in tears. I mean, I was for a long time. Some people are just, they don't know what to think, and they're just kind of, like a lot of people have anxiety about it too.
Just a realization that something had happened, dude. Like, remember, because it was evidence, dude. They had the markers, man. I've never seen that in real life. It was just one of those things where you don't know what really happened, and you got all these curious questions. You see the blood, and you're just very scared for whoever and whatever, you know?
That was another witness sharing his perspective on the unfortunate shooting. And we have this story out of North Carolina, the Oregon shooting connection.
Close to 3,000 miles away from the latest school shooting that left 10 people dead in Oregon, there is a family in the Piedmont Triad wondering how this could put someone they love in the hospital.
Crying and shock. You hear about this and you watch TV and you see this, but when it happens to your family, you're just on the floor. It's just unbelievable.
30-year-old Chris Mintz is a 2003 Randleman High School graduate. He played football, number 71, making a play during this highlight reel from more than a decade ago. Family members say he played a hero's role before being shot 5 times.
Tries to block the door to keep the gunman from coming in, gets shot 3 times, hits the floor, looks up at the gunman and says, "It's my son's birthday today." Gets shot 2 more times.
Mintz will be able to hold his son again despite 2 broken legs and lots of rehab ahead.
His vital signs are okay. I mean, he's going to have to learn to walk again, but he walked away with his life. And that's more than so many other people did.
The Mintz family says it's fortunate that Chris's father just got back from a trip to the West Coast, spending lots of time with his son and grandson. Even today, family members got to talk to Chris hours before the shootings.
My brother talked to Chris this morning on the phone while Chris was walking into school to tell him to remind his grandson that Grandpa said happy birthday.
All right, now this is video from the vigil that took place last night.
We don't know why this happened. We only know that we are called to come together as a community to banish fear and affirm love, to care for and comfort one another, to be a strong and supportive community. And in our sorrow, we will remember and honor those lost here today. And in this way, they will live forever in our hearts. May peace be with you. Can I ask everybody who's a student to raise their hand or shout out? I promise that we will do everything we can to make your return to campus feel safe and loving and comfortable. And will everybody who's staff or works at UCC make some noise? Thank you for your compassion, your leadership, stepping up to the plate, doing every single thing that you could to help people today. Can I ask anybody from Roseburg that isn't a student or an employee but is here because they love the college to make some noise? We hear you, and the world hears you, and the nation hears you, and we know you're strong. And a beautiful thing about Roseburg is how much love there is here. So I'm going to ask everyone here to do me a favor. If you think about trying to help us and you feel angry, please stay away till you don't feel angry. if you want to help us and you have love in your heart and you can go up to people who need a hug or need compassion or need to be directed to mental health services and counseling, you're invited to come help us. But anger caused this, and we can't have anger around us right this minute. We need love and compassion and healing, and it's going to take a long time.
All right, guys. So that was just some of the clips that we got from Fox National. Joining me now is Celeste. We are going to be periscoping this on Celeste's account as well as streaming live to you while we talk about the latest in this Oregon shooting, this tragedy at this community college. I still just can't believe how often I am covering mass shootings on News Now.
Right.
It's disturbing.
I think that yesterday when when kind of the news broke and everything came out, it happened like 11:30, I think our time.
Yeah, 11:25-ish, 11:20. Yes, because I was supposed to do Tech Talk with Jeff at 11:30, but then 11:25 or so, we heard this and we went straight to just covering this extensively. We didn't have a lot of information, though, yesterday. It was strictly just information that we were getting online through tweets, through the Associated Press. It was all over. In the beginning, we had heard like 15 people killed, 20 more injured, but that number has significantly reduced.
It kind of changed, and there was so much that we didn't know yesterday. And I think that as the information kind of started rolling in, we just kind of went with it. Ron did a great job at noon yesterday, kind of spelling out all the details for us. You've been watching a lot of coverage, the vigil, the update from the Oregon State Police Department,
hospital updates.
Yeah, hospital updates.
The governor is scheduled to speak momentarily as well.
But I'm sure a lot of people saw this overnight. I have like updates that come automatically to my phone, like a lot of people probably do. And I got this update from National News overnight, and then it shared that the idea that he was asking people what their religion was before he actually killed them.
And I heard that he was targeting Christians. I heard he was described as a conservative atheist. I know that his dating profile, his online dating profile, apparently said he was spiritual. We're going to stop for a second, guys, because I see that the governor of Oregon is about to speak.
All right, let's do it.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tim Freeman. I'm a Douglas County Commissioner. Thank you for being here this morning. This morning, I'm here to introduce each of our speakers, but before I do that, I want to thank our governor and our federal delegation for being here to support us in these very difficult days. Each of the speakers is going to give their statement, and we're not going to do any questions. We're here today to let this federal delegation have a chance to explain their thoughts, and as time goes by, we'll have more opportunity to understand more what's happened and have further dialogue. So the first speaker I'd like to introduce, and I'm very thankful for the governor for being here and coming down yesterday to help with this really difficult situation, is Governor Brown. Governor?
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Freeman, and thank you for your leadership yesterday. All of Oregon stands with Umpqua Community College and the city of Roseburg. I am proud of how the Roseburg community pulled together to care for and comfort each other during this horrific crisis. I want to thank our police, our firefighters, our dispatchers, our emergency medical personnel, and all those at the college for their heroic efforts yesterday. Oregon has worked continuously to prevent these kind of tragedies, but they continue to happen here and across the nation. And it is going to keep happening until we decide we want them to stop. There is no single solution that will prevent every shooting, but we must and we will do better to prevent these types of senseless violence. This is a conversation that we will have, but today is not the day. Today, we must be focused on providing the support and condolences and help this community heal. As we move forward, we can honor the lives lost at Umpqua Community College best by remembering what it means to be a caring community, to demonstrate more kindness, respect each other more, and take the time to truly connect to the people around us. This is a very difficult time for all of us, and of course, especially those here in Douglas County, whose lives and families were changed by the events of yesterday. One person's deranged act may have indeed broken all of our hearts, but he cannot prevent our hearts from growing back bigger and stronger and more committed to the Oregon that we all love so very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Brown. Our next speaker, and I should mention the next three speakers, got on planes and flew out here from Washington, D.C. to be with us today, and I'm very grateful for their efforts. The next speaker is Senator Ron Wyden.
In the last 24 hours, Oregonians struggled with unspeakable tragedy, grieved for the victims and the families and loved ones, and gave a big, big thanks to our courageous first responders. Right now is a time for healing and helping the community. For the future, it is clear that it does have to be about more than words and good intentions if this carnage is to finally end. As a country, we cannot just shrug our shoulders and move on. In my view, ending these massacres is going to require compromise. Compromise that is about rights and responsibilities. Gun owners have rights under the law, and there must be responsibilities if these massacres are going to end. And Oregon is exactly the place to lead this conversation. What we have shown as Oregonians again and again is we can step forward and help our people as we seek to help this community today and show a bit of light for the rest of the nation. Today is not about what any of us in the United States Congress have voted for in the past. It is about what common ground we as people who don't always agree can find in the future.
Thank you, Senator. Next we have Senator Merkley.
We have a long series of names branded on our hearts from across the nation. Places like Columbine, like Sandy Hook, and now here at Umpqua Community College here in Roseburg. It's a list of names that no community ever wants to be included in. And at this moment, this horrific, this senseless act has broken hearts, every heart here. This is a small community. It's a community where everyone knows someone who was hurt or killed yesterday. The community has come together in an extraordinary fashion. The first responders responded quickly and competently. The sheriff, and the county commissioners, and the mayor and the city manager all jumped in to make decisions in a flash to respond and address the situation. They did an incredible job, but there is no response that can repair the broken hearts. You know, yesterday, when I walked back from the Capitol to the Hart Senate office building, I was told there's been a tragedy in Oregon. There's been a mass shooting in Oregon. And Senator, it's from your home county, from Douglas County. I have a special place in my heart for this county. I was born in Myrtle Creek, just south of here. And when I was about 2, we moved here to Roseburg. I went to first grade here. I have family on both sides, my father's side and my mother's side. And this morning I was asked about my family down here. And I must say I never thought it could possibly be that my family, my extended family, my cousins were directly affected. But as I said, this is a small town and everyone's affected. And one of the individuals who died is the great-granddaughter of my first cousin. So she is my cousin. And I just tell you, every heart is damaged and broken. And this community is coming together to embrace each other, to exercise the companionship, the love, the affection. No one could have envisioned that here in this wonderful, beautiful place of Roseburg that this could happen. It is going to give us all food for thought. This long list gets longer with every passing week and month. We've had 18 school shootings here in 2015. We've had 45 mass shootings in America in 2015. So we will all be carrying in our hearts not only the sorrow and the pain, but also the responsibility to ponder what we can do, that there will be fewer cities, that this list will not continue to grow as it has. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. So our last speaker today is Representative Peter DeFazio. Representative.
Well, here, approximately 25 hours after this tragedy, this is a day for us to mourn those who died and to give as much as we can, our hearts and our prayers, to their family and their friends, and to pray for those who are still in the hospital, and then for this community, for the college, for the town, for the townspeople. Today is a day of mourning. We'll go through grief. We'll have memorials, and then there will come a time when we have all the facts from the investigation, which is ongoing, that we may find discreet ways to deal with problems such as this in the future. Unfortunately, this is not the first time that I've spoken at a news conference like this. Thurston took place 2 miles from my home. And in the case of Thurston, it was like I saw the press conference earlier today, tremendous demand for information, which isn't yet readily available, for solutions, which we can't even begin to think of until we know all the facts. And the impatience. This is not a time to be impatient. It's a time first to come together in solidarity and to give what solace we can to those who have lost so much. There will come a time where we'll move forward with ideas and solutions, and I expect this delegation, with the support of these local officials and with our governor, to move together in unison. But that is not today. That's for the future. Thank you.
Can I have you step right here? I'd like everybody to come in close here, please. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. On behalf of the Board of Commissioners, I want to thank this group of people that has responded at all levels of government, city, county, state, federal, the tribes here helping us. And I really want to thank the first responders that are behind us. We are all here to support the victims and families of this horrible incident. Thank you.
Come with me. Follow me.
Walk right in.
All right, guys, it looks like that is a wrap on that press conference. Very emotional scene over there.
How you doing?
As you can see, many people shaking hands, the governor shaking hands, giving hugs. Very emotional time in Oregon, very obviously unexpected. You never expect something like this to happen in your community, so.
Well, I think it's a small community, so then
Right.
in a lot of times in communities like that, you know everyone.
Yeah.
And you, it's not just a community, but it becomes a family.
Right.
People you go to school with, just a little more than 3,000 people, I think, 3,000 students. They were there on campus, you know, full-time students. And so...
and it's one of those towns where I read most people right after high school just go there. That's what's assumed. You go to Umpqua Community College. I know that they even had grief counselors available for the high school students because they probably knew someone who went there or planned to go there, and it obviously affected them. I thought, you know, you and I were talking off camera. I haven't talked about it here on News Now yet, but one of the 3 American heroes from the France train attack, that France terror attack, you know how 3 Americans thwarted that attack?
Right.
He actually attends Umpqua Community College, and the only reason he wasn't on campus that day is because, you know, due to his newly found fame, he's on Dancing with the Stars.
Right, and so otherwise he would have been there.
Yeah, he would have been at that college, but instead he was in Los Angeles shooting, and then he tweeted about how he was going home, and he went back to Roseburg, and he, I know he's there with his community, and that's just a random side note. It's just, you know, it's sad all around. 9 people killed, 7 others injured, 10 again killed if you include the shooter.
Yeah, and you hear some of the reports and some of the witnesses, and they say that their teachers were like, take cover, or you heard one of the teachers say that he went upstairs and locked the doors to the restrooms, and they heard screaming, and it's just a real scary situation. And when I worked, my first job in TV was actually up in Idaho. I worked up in Boise for a station up there. And one of the photographers, she was a girl.
Right.
Her name's Kim. We have remained friends to this day. And she was a photographer there, but she moved back to like the Roseburg, Medford. That's her home. She's from Roseburg. And she was saying that it's it's sad for her community and for her family who lives there. And she said that she doesn't know anybody who goes to the community college now, but she probably does because it is like a family there.
Right.
And a lot of people who leave and then they may come back for a short time. There's kind of like a Tri-Cities area between them and Medford and another city. And so some of those cities are only like an hour or so away from one another, maybe 30, 45 minutes. So we're talking about Roseburg in and of itself, but there's a lot of people who live in and around in other cities all around there that may actually be affected as well. And so it's not just that town, but it's a lot of people, the whole state of Oregon, really. And we all feel for them, and our heart aches and breaks for the families who are affected.
Right.
And it's always sad when you see something like this happen again.
Right. And I know we haven't really talked about the shooter. It's one of those things. How much attention do you want to give the shooter? It's an ongoing debate. Do you want to acknowledge the shooter? Do you want to name the shooter? Do you want to talk about why the shooter did this and that? Or are you feeding into why the shooter did it for notoriety?
Right.
And he had written blog posts, apparently, talking about different mass shootings. He actually pointed out, or not even mass shootings, but shootings in general. He pointed out the one that happened in Virginia in August, the reporter and the photographer who were killed live on air. And he pointed to that and how no one knew who this Vester Flanagan was one day, and then the next day everyone knows his name.
Well, and the odd thing too, I think, is when they talked to some of the neighbors, they said, it's typical, right, for news crews or the media to say, what do you know about him? What was he like? Did he have a personality? Was he, did he have friends around all the time? What type of guy was he? And there's a lot of times where you see that they come forward and say he was quiet, kept to himself. But in this situation, they actually said that his actions were a little odd, that he...
Right, he was quiet. He was
really quiet,
unfriendly.
But they actually said he was unfriendly. Like there was an indication that he wasn't, that there was something going on or something.
Right, and that was according to the neighbors. I know that his stepsister, on the other hand, obviously reacted a very different way because his father lives in LA, in Southern California, and I know that the news outlets there spoke with his father as well as his stepsister. Stepsister saying that, she was so surprised. He was always thinking about other people before himself. I mean, obviously, it's one of those things, too, because you forget that at the end of the day, this person had a family, too. And his family
I think we had sound from
his dad.
His dad.
Which I haven't played for the viewers yet, but it's one of those things where...
It's actually...
not... Even though he might be the bad guy, his family...
Isn't the bad guy.
Isn't the bad guy, isn't the bad family, and yet they're mourning, and it's almost difficult for them to publicly mourn because the public now feels this anger towards their son or their brother or what. Yeah,
bitterness.
Exactly.
Yeah, you feel so like why didn't you do something? What happened here? And
right.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
neighbor had said that his mom was crying all day yesterday. Up in Oregon. He lived with his mom up there. Do you have to go?
Yeah. We're actually I'm going to head in studio because we have the noon show coming up. But thank you for having me.
Thanks for hanging out.
And thanks for welcoming me here. Next time I'll come up and chat again
Come
soon.
hang.
All right. Have a good day.
Thanks, Celeste. All right, guys. Since we talked about it for a second, I'm going to go ahead and pull this up for you guys. This video of the father of the shooting suspect, or the shooter rather. The father spoke out in California yesterday. Let's listen to what he had to say.
I'm just shocked as everybody at what happened today. I've just been talking to the police and the FBI, and that's all the details I have right now is that what you guys know already, okay?
Sir, did you have any inclination that your son had problems?
I can't answer any questions right now. I don't want to answer any questions right now. Obviously, it's been a devastating day, devastating for me and my family. So all I ask is, I know you guys are here to do your job. All I ask is please just respect our privacy, and so far you've done that. So
terribly sorry for the loss.
Shocked. Shocked is all I can say.
So no one looked at this and said These are exterior shots of the home where his father lives. I believe his father lives in the Agora Hills area or the Valley in some capacity based on what I read on the Associated Press wires earlier. So that was his father, obviously very devastated, reacting to the news. Here is some more video, more witness reaction.
We heard a loud bang in the classroom next door. We weren't sure what was going on. We thought maybe a fight broke out. There was some loud, talking going on in the room next to us. So, our teacher went she wasn't sure if she should knock or not. And when she went to go knock on the door that joined the two classrooms, there were 3 more loud bangs, 3 or 4, and we all recognized that those were gunshots. And of course, we all ran out of the classroom.
I heard the shots, but I didn't know what they were at first. I just thought maybe it was construction work with the new building going up next door. And then a student from the class next door that was in class came out and said, "You guys should come in, there's a active shooter report going on."
This is video from the scene yesterday. Obviously, a very sad, tragic day. We're going to listen to more witness testimony.
How are you doing?
Right now, I feel like I'm doing okay. I'm better than I was earlier. There's just so many emotions going on right now. There's so many things you feel that, I don't know, that you would never expect. But right now, I feel like I'm okay. Maybe still in shock. I just can't wrap my brain around it. I don't get it.
You were in the classroom right next door to where the shooting happened, and you said that at the front of the classroom there's an adjoining door.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
What did you hear? What made you first think I'm not sure if something's right or?
Yeah. Well, it was in the middle of the class. I was taking notes, and then all of a sudden there was this loud pop. And the only way I can describe it is sounded like a ruler smacking against a chalkboard. So I didn't really think it was like a gunshot because it didn't really sound like it. But it made everyone jump. We all jumped, and my teacher, Miss Fair, she's like, whoa, she's like, I hope everyone's all right in there, because we didn't know what was going on. And then we went back to taking notes it all happened so very fast. And then
and your teacher decided to go over to that adjoining door.
Yeah.
What happened then?
After the second or third shot was fired, I know that now, but at the time we didn't know what it was. Again, you could hear shuffling and, desks moving in the other room. And
where the shooting was happening.
Right. And one of my classmates from the back had said, "Why don't you go over and see if they're all right?" And my teacher, Miss Fair, she's like, "I'm not going to go open the doors, I'll knock." And she went over and she knocked on the door. And she yelled through the door, she said, "Hey, is everyone okay over there?" And then as soon as she said that, multiple shots were fired. And when she turned and she looked at the classroom, the look on her face was horrifying. And that's when I knew something was wrong. And she looked at us, and it was just, I don't know, it's hard to explain. And when she looked at us, she said, "We have to get out now." And one of my other classmates jumped up and he's like, "Everybody out, come on, let's go." And we just immediately began running, and still didn't know really what was going on, but I knew the look and the fear on my teacher's face that it was serious. So, yeah, it was just chaotic.
And that person that helped kind of get you out and say everyone's got to get out, you said that person was in the military or had some military training,
Yes.
right? And so did you guys take off running down a hallway then or outside your classroom? You're probably looking for someplace safe.
We all ran out, and I was just following my teacher. A bunch of the other students were just all over the place. They ran in opposite directions, but I was going to follow my teacher. And she was just yelling to other kids standing by, "Come on, you have to run, you have to go, let's go." And it was just, I don't know, it was just it was so surreal, is this really happening? But I knew that she was serious. So we started running towards the center of campus, kind of up a hill, and still didn't know where we were going, what we were going to do. And I made it to the bookstore. Yeah, we made it to the bookstore. And we're ushered into the back room, and we're all standing there, still don't know what's going on. The police were called. They locked the doors. And still, again, we weren't sure if there were gunshots or not, and we weren't sure what was happening. So everybody was just kind of standing around. We weren't sure what was happening. Then a few minutes later, we heard 3 more gunshots. And at that time, we did know that was a shooter. And to know that that was real, and then to have like confirmation that, yeah, somebody did have a gun, somebody is shooting, it's just petrifying.
Well, at first I heard it sound like fireworks, and then I kept seeing police officer after police officer going down the road with sirens, and I was thinking, they kept coming and kept coming, and I was thinking, what is going on? So I walked up on the road and walked up to the college and talked to people there, and they kept them away from us for a while. One girl came out wrapped in a blanket with blood on her, and they said they weren't transferring any of the dead till the campus was clear, but 7 ambulances left with sirens and lights.
All right, guys, now we're getting audio in of the police dispatch. This was also sent to us from Fox National. Audio of... You should be hearing it momentarily. Again, this is just video to set up the clip. Again, this is video that was shot yesterday. Obviously a very, very tragic shooting. Very sad what happened on the campus of Umpqua Community College. Many people were bussed off the campus. Everyone bussed off the campus. I believe to County Fairgrounds.
You guys rock. Thank you so much. You guys rock. You guys are fantastic.
88183 to back, copy active shooter, UCC 1140 Umpqua College Road. UCC, this is going to be the Snyder Hall. Somebody is outside one of the doors, shooting through the door. There is a female in the computer lab. We do have one female that has been shot at this time. We're still attempting to get further.
Exchange shots with him. He's in the classroom on it's going to be the southeast side of Hall.
Again, guys, these
Copy, Roseburg 17 exchanging gunshots right now with the male. He's in the classroom on the southeast side of Snyder Hall.
Some of the calls that came in yesterday.
Code 4, suspect is down.
All right, guys, now we are going to play this video of the suspect's apartment. You can see that it is completely blocked off with police tape. Obviously very sad. His mother, apparently, they lived together in this apartment complex, according to a neighbor. His mother was sobbing all day yesterday. No matter what you think about the gunman, he was still someone's child, so obviously this is going to affect his parents. It's very traumatic.
He lived above us. My daughter has personally heard confrontations going on, which worried her enough to want to go upstairs and ask what was going on.
Here's some video from the vigil that took place last night.
My name's Chris Boyce, and it's a tragic day in Douglas County. I challenge you all to never utter his name. This is about the families, this is about the victims, this is about our community, and this is about the tragic loss that we all suffered today, and this is not about the shooter.
Out tonight, everybody hold up their candles. UCC strong. Thank you, everyone.
All right, guys, now I'm going to play some video from the scene yesterday. These are the aerials that were sent to us yesterday. I'm going to give you guys some updates from the Associated Press now. Oregon school shooting. We know he was armed with multiple guns. A student who worked on stage productions with the gunman said he was a normal guy, even a bit nerdy. This was coming from Alex Fryer, the stage manager for plays at Umpqua Community College. He said that the suspect, or well, the gunman rather, was a production assistant responsible for building sets last semester. It wasn't clear if he was actually enrolled at the college in that town, but according to Alex, she said she and some students thought that he was taking some classes there. She added that they didn't really interact with him much, but he typically wore funny sunglasses, saying he was the typical Roseburg kid, kind of nerdy, kind of out there, just himself. Let's see what we have from this story from Fox National.
Devastation on an Oregon college campus as a man armed with at least 4 guns opens fire on a classroom full of students.
We need love and compassion and healing, and it's going to take a long time.
People in the town of Roseburg are in mourning following a mass shooting at Umpqua Community College. Police say the violence, which erupted Thursday morning, could have been worse.
We do know that we have at least 2 heroic officers who responded into the building within minutes and exchanged gunfire with the suspect.
The gunman, who reportedly demanded his victims state their religion before firing, has been identified as 26-year-old Chris Harper Mercer.
People were running in every direction. I ran to a hill. Everybody was just running everywhere.
Shocked. Shocked is all I can say. It's been a devastating day. Devastating for me and my family.
Hours after the shooting, police could be seen searching the suspect's apartment, looking for clues as to what may have led up to the violence.
He lived above us. My daughter has personally heard confrontations going on, which worried her enough to want to go upstairs and ask what was going on.
In the wake of the tragedy, President Obama is calling for stricter gun laws, saying it's not enough to offer prayers for the victims.
It does nothing to prevent this carnage from being inflicted someplace else in America. We collectively are answerable to those families who lose their loved ones because of our inaction.
At this time, it's not clear where or how the suspect got the guns involved in the shooting. Meantime, the college will be closed until Monday. In Los Angeles, Will Carr, Fox News.
All right, guys, now we have more reaction from witnesses at the school.
Well, I was in a building a couple hundred yards from where it was, easily in sight. I was in a tutoring center with about 20-plus students. We were all studying that day with the teacher's room in the back, and it was all calm until my teacher, Mike Mateo, had ran into the room at the top of his lungs yelling to get down and get into the back room and hide and stay quiet. After about sitting and hiding in the back room for about 15 minutes to an hour, we finally emerged when a state patrol officer came out and told us it was okay for a bag check. And we looked out, and it was the most quiet and peaceful and freakishly ghost-like campus there ever was. We had been sitting in the room for about 50 minutes, and then other students started getting on their smartphones and looking up and showed that there was a gunman on campus, reported shooting, and people had been shot, and I started getting a lot more worried, and seeing that was a lot more serious than anything I had ever been through or thought, and started looking around. After that, I was just trying to comfort those around me, make sure that they weren't going to panic or extremely just freak out. Well, it's just as many years as I had known and been there, it's just been a completely free and, violence-free and happy campus. And it's beautiful there, and there's not been any loud noises even, and it's just been all peaceful. And everybody there gets along, and friendships, and everybody gets along with their teachers, and it's just extremely surprising anything like this happened anywhere near there.
All right, guys, I'm going to give you some more updates from the Associated Press. Now, the U.S. Army says the gunman who killed 9 people at that community college flunked out of basic training in 2008. Lieutenant Colonel Ben Garrett, an Army spokesman, said that Christopher Harper Mercer was in service at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, starting on November 5th, 2008. But by December 11th, just a month later, he was discharged for failing to meet the minimum administrative standards. Garrett did not say what standards Harper Mercer failed to meet. Generally, the Army requires recruits to pass physical fitness tests and to be in generally good physical and mental health. Recruits also must score highly enough on a multiple choice test covering science, math, reading comprehension, and other topics. Again, 9 people killed, 7 others wounded at that college. Couple more updates. A federal agency says investigators have recovered 6 weapons at the college and 7 at the apartment of the gunman who killed 9 people. So a total of 13 weapons accessible to the gunman. All of the weapons were purchased legally. 7 of them were purchased by the shooter or his family members in the last 3 years. According to the ATF special agent, investigators also found a flak jacket next to a rifle at the school, which contained steel plates. We do not have the names or the identities of those killed yet. Officially, we haven't gotten any official names of those victims, but I'm continuing to monitor the feeds, and we'll get you that update as they become available. Again, according to social media profiles linked to the shooter, those social media profiles suggested that the shooter was fascinated by the IRA, frustrated by traditional organized religion, and that he tracked other mass shootings. He had a MySpace page showing just 2 friends and had at least 1 online dating profile. A blog was linked to him. A torrent streaming site was also linked to him. Apparently, he had blog posts that referenced multiple shootings, and some of the things he downloaded included several horror films, as well as a documentary on the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School. One of his blog posts urged his readers to watch the online footage of Vester Flanagan shooting those 2 TV news reporter and the photographer in Virginia. Another blog post lamented materialism and blamed materialism as preventing spiritual development. His MySpace page apparently included several photos and graphics of the Irish Republican Army, as well as a picture of Mercer holding a rifle. According to a doctor at Mercy Medical Center, one victim of the mass shooting will likely be released from the hospital today. That hospital, Mercy Medical Center, received 10 patients on Thursday. 1 died. 2 were quickly treated and released. and 3 were transferred to that nearby hospital in Eugene for a higher level of care. We heard from doctors at that hospital not too long ago, giving us an update on those 3 patients there. Now, of the 4 remaining patients at Mercy Medical Center, 1 was discharged late Thursday, 1 expected to leave today, and the 2 others are expected to survive, but 1 is still in critical condition. So that victim will likely be in the hospital a little bit longer. The 3 patients who needed additional care were transferred to Peace Health Sacred Heart Medical Center at Riverbend. That was a hospital in the Eugene area. 2 of them are in critical condition, and 1 of the victims is in serious condition. We just heard a press conference from the governor of Oregon not too long ago. The governor and members of the state congressional delegation have spoken out about the need to stem the tide of mass shootings in the U.S. after a gunman killed 9 people at a Oregon Community College. At that news conference, they were urging lawmakers to do more to prevent bloodshed, but also added that today is not the day. Today is for mourning and helping the community heal. And one of the senators who spoke, who grew up in the area, thanked first responders and said that one of those who died was the great-granddaughter of his first cousin. Really, obviously, sad news. Small community, so it obviously affected many people in the area. Everyone probably knew someone that attended that college or had attended that college at some point or another. Yesterday, the community college president spoke in a press conference, and this is what she had to say.
'50th anniversary recently, and this is a tragedy. And our hearts and prayers go out to the families and to the staff and students who witnessed this atrocity. This is a real crisis situation. We really want to thank, it's been an amazing outpouring of community support. We have taxi cab drivers volunteering to take students home from the fairgrounds. We have law enforcement, all kinds of agencies, grief counselors there for the students and staff. At the fairgrounds, they opened their doors to us. The city manager has helped us. The county commissioners have helped us. The governor's office has helped us. All the other colleges in Oregon have offered their help. We appreciate all the help that everybody has given us today. We are still sorting through, trying to reunify students with their families, and that is the highest priority right now. We have families waiting for the last bus to arrive with students on it, and we have grief counselors for those parents who have no children coming off that bus. So that's been our highest priority.
All right, guys, and this is what VP Joe Biden had to say about the shooting yesterday.
So I want to say at the outset here, as you all know, there's nothing, well, there may be, but there's few things worse than getting that phone call saying your child is gone. Your child is gone. Or your brother, your sister, your husband, your wife. There is an overwhelming consensus in America on two things that are equally defensible. The Second Amendment insane gun legislation relating to background checks and the ability to, the Second Amendment doesn't say you can own a bazooka. It doesn't say you can own an F-15 with Hellfire missiles. There's the ability of the government to limit the type of weapon that is available. And although we don't have enough information now, we don't have enough information now for me to comment on the specifics. My guess is, I'll prepare to bet you that it was a semi-automatic or an automatic weapon. I don't know that yet, but that'd be my guess. For so many people to be shot in such a short amount of time. We're basically the only civilized country in the world where we had these massive murders in our country. And 87% of the American people agreed with the proposal I put together for the president on background checks and gun safety. Even over 60% of NRA families, National Rifle Association families, support it. So folks, I cite that as part of the dysfunction because we're able to have decided minorities prevent consensus from occurring. It brings home every time something happens in the school just how the safest place on earth should be, our schools and our colleges. But that's for another day. So my thoughts and prayers, I'm sure along with yours, with the families who've lost folks today.
All right, now another witness describing the shooting and the shooter.
I parked right in front of Snyder Hall, so this would be Snyder Hall, and then I parked like on the very right of it, and on the very right it's like all open windows, so I could see directly in, and I saw him shooting, but I know they're doing construction like close by, so I didn't really think anything of it. I didn't think there was a shooting. I didn't get any phone calls or messages saying that there was a shooting going on, so I just assumed it was construction, and then I saw his gun, and then I was like, okay, this escalated, and he probably shot like 20 times by like just the couple minutes I was there, and when I was there, he was like shaking his head, and then he was pointing like the gun, like he was doing this, and he was like pointing the gun, and then it looked like he was kind of psycho. He was like shaking his head, and he didn't really know how to like control his emotions. I feel like he was screaming, and I was seeing him walking back and forth in the classroom, and he was shooting the ground, and I think he was shooting people when he was shooting the ground. And I was probably watching him for 4-5 minutes, and then he looked over at me because I pulled out my phone. I was going to take a picture, and when I pulled out my phone, he saw me, and he pointed the gun like right at me, like right like on my truck, and it startled me, and he paused for a few moments, and then he stopped, and then he continued to shoot the ground. And after he was shooting the ground, I was backing up to leave, and I saw him walk out of I saw him like going outside. He was by the door, and then when I was pulling out onto the road, he was outside of the building. In the beginning, I was really upset. I just couldn't believe that this could happen. Like, he was shooting at my friend. He didn't shoot my friend, but he was shooting at her, and we were both really upset, because how could this happen in Roseburg, Oregon? Out of all places, Roseburg, Oregon, it's the smallest town. There's good people here.
Obviously a very descriptive witness account right there. She said she saw this shooter, was very descriptive as to what he was doing. Obviously would be very emotional over such a thing. And we'll continue to bring you Oregon shooting updates as we get them, as we get new video, as we get new reaction from victims, from witnesses. We will bring that to you here on News Now. In the meantime, we are now at the White House. You know that podium. President Obama expected to speak momentarily. Stay tuned, guys. We have a lot more News Now ahead. All right, guys, coming up, President Obama going to hold a news conference. Any minute, he should be out and speaking to you guys. You probably tuned in yesterday. President Obama visibly upset over yesterday's tragic shooting at Umpqua Community College.
Yeah, hello. Hey, Douglas. How are you? I might have to go. I might have to go in a minute, but I can talk right now. What do you have? Okay. What is it? Okay. Let me call you back. Okay. All right. Just because I'm getting ready to. I'll talk to you later. Thank you. Bye. Oh, is this me? Oh, okay. I didn't have my headset. Hello? Hello? If I'd had my headset on, it would have freaked me out too. Scare me. I scare myself. So, Mary, I mean, do they know that's open? I mean, that's where they make it. Yeah, no, that is what I had, yes.
All right, everybody. Any minute now, we are expecting the president to speak, and it looks like the one reporter is sitting down. That is always a sign of the president is on his way to the podium. There you go with the long zoom. Just showcase that mic there.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 2-minute warning to the start of the program. This is the 2-minute warning. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, accompanied by Secretary Arnie Duncan and Dr. John King.
Please be seated, everybody. Good afternoon. Arnie Duncan is one of my longest-serving cabinet secretaries, and he's been a friend for a lot longer than that. So it's with some regret and sorrow that I've accepted his decision to return to our hometown of Chicago. After more than 6 years of living in Washington, Arnie's wonderful wife, Karen, and their excellent kids, Claire and Ryan, who are also buddies of mine, wanted to move back home. And that's meant, in the interim, a lot of time apart. So I'll be honest, I pushed Arnie to stay. Sorry, guys. But I also know from personal experience how hard it is to be away from your family on a sustained basis. So while I will miss Arnie deeply, he's more than earned the right to return home. Take a look at what Arnie's accomplished over the last 6.5 years. He's one of the longest-serving secretaries of education in our history, and one of the more consequential. In just a few years, Arnie and his team have delivered some incredible results at every stage of the educational experience. More than 30 states have upped their investment in early childhood education. Nearly every state in America has raised standards for teaching and learning and expectations for what our kids can learn. And our high school graduation rate is at an all-time high. We've helped millions more families afford college, and more Americans are graduating from college than ever before. And that's just scratching the surface. Arnie's done more to bring our educational system, sometimes kicking and screaming, into the 21st century than anybody else. America's going to be better off for what he has done. It's going to be more competitive and more prosperous. It is going to be more equal and more upwardly mobile. It's a record that I truly believe no other education secretary can match. Arnie bleeds this stuff. He cares so much about our kids, and he has been so passionate about this work. And everybody who interacts with him, including people who disagree with him on some issues, never questions the genuineness and heart that he has brought to this job. So I couldn't be prouder of him, and for good measure, Arnie also holds the record for most points scored in an NBA All-Star game. And he is my favorite partner in pickup basketball. The smartest player I know, even though he's very slow. And has no hops. He knows it's true. I will say, watching Ryan, by the way, that the son will soon be surpassing the father because this young man has got game. Now, keep in mind, none of this change has been easy, and we still have a long way to go. One of the things about education is that it doesn't deliver results tomorrow or the next day. This is a decade-long or longer proposition. We plant seeds now, we make changes now, and we watch each successive class benefit from these reforms, and it goes in fits and starts, and we have a decentralized system. That's how our education tradition evolved. So it's not easy, and it's not quick, but we are making progress. And we're not going to stop in these last 15 months. And that's why it's so important and why I think we're very lucky that even as Arnie steps down, we've got an exceptionally talented educator to step in, and that is Dr. John King. John is already on Arnie's leadership team. He's been an educator all his life, a teacher, a principal, a leader of schools, the New York State's education chief. He's the right man to lead the department. He shares our commitment to preparing every child for success in a more innovative and competitive world. He's got a great team already at the Department of Education, of which I am very, very proud. His family is equally cool and good looking. And he has equally exceptional children. And I know that together we're going to continue to be able to do great things on behalf of our kids. So Arnie and John, I want to wish both of you hearty congratulations and good luck. Now I'm going to let them say a few words, and then I'm just going to make a few remarks before I take some questions from the press. Start with Arnie.
I've cried more today than I have in a while, so I'll try not to get up here and cry. I'll start with the president. And when he asked us to come to D.C. and work with him, that was about a 1-minute conversation with my wife. And it wasn't that we wanted to leave Chicago. It wasn't that we necessarily wanted to be education secretary. I just wanted to be on his team and believed so much in what he was about and what he stood for. And I have to say, 7.5 years later, my admiration is only greater. And it's pretty remarkable. It's important for the folks to know that every hard decision, his only question was, what's the right thing to do for kids? And challenging us and our team to fight for kids every single day. And often that was the hard political decision. And that was never a factor. And his passion and his commitment has been absolutely extraordinary. And for me, it's not the political leadership, it's not the educational leadership, it's the moral leadership. And I just can't tell you, Mr. President, personally, what an unbelievable honor it was just to spend some time. And for those, it's every day you see it, but for folks who watched him last night talking about the horrendous massacre, gun massacre in Oregon, and how preventable these things are, we need that moral leadership, and please keep that fight. To our team, the team you have at the White House, Cecilia and Dennis and Valerie and others, it's been extraordinary to work with the DPC. I don't say this lightly. I think our team at the Department of Education is stronger than it's ever been. You never know over 7-8 years how those teams go, and do you have the B team towards the end? Well, I think we have the A team, and a combination of being able to work with the White House, Sean and Sylvia and so many folks are here, Anthony, with the team in place. I'm just extraordinarily hopeful and confident about what they can do together. Emma and Ted and the rest of the crew, you said a little bit about John, and for folks to know, for all of us, this work is very, very personal. For the president, it's very personal. For me, it's very personal. John was one of those kids that probably shouldn't be in a room like this if you sort of look at the stereotypes. And not the easiest time growing up. He'll tell you more about it, but lost both his parents at a pretty early age. Went to live with his brother. That wasn't very easy either. But he had an amazing teacher who saw something in him and kept him going. And today, he gets to stand here with the president. And so many times, I think we in society write off kids that look like John and come from places like John. And to see what he can accomplish, I think that's what drives all of us. We know there's so many other kids out there we can reach. And while I'm deeply, deeply sad to be leaving, I'm extraordinarily happy and thankful and proud that John's going to carry on this work with the team. So I want to thank everybody for their hard work. I quickly want to, try to get emotional here, but thank my parents as well. And my dad is a lifelong educator at the University of Chicago, taught there all his life. My mother started an inner-city tutoring program before we were born and raised all of us as a part of that program. And that changed our lives. And all our life, we saw what kids could do when they were given a chance. And that's why we do this work today. And to be able to see what she did at one little corner at 46 in Greenwood, and to now have a chance over the past 6.5 years to try and have an impact around the nation, because this man gave us a chance. For my family, I can't tell you how much it means to us. And then finally, just to my family. And I love this work. I love this team. I love the president. I love the chance to serve. The only thing I love more is you guys. And I can't wait to come home and see a couple more track meets and maybe get to coach Ryan a little bit and maybe have a few more dinners and maybe go to a movie someday. That'd be pretty amazing. So it's been too long. And so it's been an amazing journey, and I feel so proud to be so lucky to have been a part of this team. And Mr. President, thanks for creating the climate in which all of us here could have the impact we did. And we can never repay the debt of gratitude we owe you for your leadership and your courage. So thank you so much. I want to turn it over to John.
Thank you, Arnie, for very kind words. Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity to serve and for the faith that you've placed in me and the team that we have at the department. I'm deeply honored by the chance to serve and also deeply humbled by following in Arnie's footsteps. Arnie is an extraordinary leader who I have watched demonstrate tremendous courage in fighting for kids and fighting for what's best for kids. But also always being willing to listen to folks and to make adjustments and to make sure that everything we do every day is towards the goal of greater equity. Mr. President, you and Arnie and our team at the department have laid out an ambitious agenda, from strengthening early childhood education and expanding access to early childhood, to raising standards for teaching and learning in K through 12, to ensuring that more Americans have access to high quality higher education, to ensuring that we support our teachers and that we invest in our teachers and provide the best preparation and support and leadership opportunities for them. It's an incredible agenda, and I'm proud to be able to carry it forward with the amazing team that we have at the department. Earlier this week, Arnie gave a speech at the National Press Club, and in that speech, Arnie said, education can be the difference between life and death. And I know that's true because it was for me. I grew up in Brooklyn. I lost my mom when I was 8, my dad when I was 12. My dad was very sick before he passed. I moved around between family members and schools. But teachers, New York City public school teachers, are the reason that I am alive. They are the reason that I became a teacher. They are the reason I'm standing here today. Those teachers created amazing educational experiences, but also gave me hope about what is possible, what could be possible for me in life. I know schools can't do it alone. There's work we have to do on economic development and housing and healthcare, but I know that my parents, who spent their lives as New York City public school educators, believe that school was at the heart of our promise of equality of opportunity for all Americans. That's what they believe, that's what the president believes, that's what Arnie believes, and that's what I feel very privileged to be able to work on with this amazing team we have at the department. Every child in the United States, every college student, every disconnected youth, every working parent who just wants a few more credits in order to improve their salary and position at their job, everyone deserves the kind of opportunity that I had to have a great education. Every child deserves the kind of opportunity that my beautiful daughters, Amina and Maria, have a great education, the kind of education their grandparents worked to provide. I'm so grateful to my very supportive wife, Melissa. So grateful to the secretary for the opportunity he gave me to join his team, and incredibly grateful to the president for the opportunity to work with a wonderful group of people at the education department to try to expand opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Two good men doing really important work. So I'm lucky to have them both as colleagues and as friends, and I'm looking forward to seeing even more work done in the next few months. We've got some other business to attend to. So all of you who were here to celebrate Arnie and John, you're lucky enough now to have to sit through a little bit of a press conference with me. So make yourselves comfortable. I warned the kids ahead of time. I said, try not to look completely bored. I'm going to take a couple of questions from the press, but first, a few additional pieces of business. First of all, we learned today that our business has created another 118,000 new jobs in September, which means that we now have had 67 straight months of job creation, 13.2 million new jobs in all, and an unemployment rate that has fallen from a high of 10% down to 5.1%. These long-term trends are obviously good news, particularly for every American waking up each morning and heading off to a new job. But we would be doing even better if we didn't have to keep on dealing with unnecessary crises in Congress every few months. And this is especially important right now because although the American economy has been chugging along at a steady pace, much of the global economy is softening. We've seen an impact on our exports, which was a major driver of growth for us, particularly at the beginning of the recovery. And so our own growth could slow if Congress does not do away with some of the counterproductive austerity measures that they have put in place, and if Congress does not avoid the kind of manufactured crises that shatter consumer confidence and could disrupt an already skittish global economy. On Wednesday, more than half of Republicans voted to shut down the government for the second time in 2 years. Now, the good news is there were enough votes in both parties to pass a last-minute bill to keep the government open and operating for another 10 weeks before we can get a more long-term solution. But keep in mind, that gimmick only sets up another potential manufactured crisis just 2 weeks before Christmas. And I've said this before, I want to repeat it. This is not the way the United States should be operating. Oftentimes I hear from folks up on Capitol Hill the need for American leadership, the need for America to be number one. Well, you know what? Around the globe, part of what makes us a leader is when we govern effectively and we keep our own house in order and we pass budgets and we can engage in long-term planning and we can invest in the things that are important for the future. That's U.S. leadership. When we fail to do that, we diminish U.S. leadership. It's not how we are supposed to operate. And we can't just keep on kicking down the road without solving any problems or doing any long-term planning for the future. That's true for our military, that's true for our domestic programs. The American people, American families deserve better. And we can grow faster and the economy can improve if Congress acts with dispatch. It will get worse if they don't. That's why I want to be very clear. I will not sign another short-sighted spending bill like the one Congress sent me this week. We purchased ourselves 10 additional weeks. We need to use them effectively. Keep in mind that a few years ago, both parties put in place harmful automatic cuts that make no distinction between spending we don't need and spending we do. We can revisit the history of how that happened. I have some rather grim memories of it. But the notion was that even as we were bringing down the deficit, we would come up with a sustainable, smart, long-term approach to investing in the things that we need. That didn't happen. And so now these cuts that have been maintained have been keeping our economy from growing faster. It's time to undo them. If we don't, then we will have to fund our economic and national security priorities in 2016 at the same levels that we did in 2006. Now understand, during that decade, between 2006 and 2016, our economy has grown by 12%. Our population has grown by 8%. New threats have emerged. New opportunities have appeared. We can't fund our country the way we did 10 years ago because we have greater demands with an aging population, with kids who need schools, with roads that need to be fixed, with a military on which we are placing extraordinary demands. And we can't cut our way to prosperity. Other countries have tried it, and it has not worked. We've grown faster than they have because we did not pursue these blind, unthinking cuts to necessary investments for our growth. And by the way, because we've grown faster than them, we've brought our deficits down faster than they have. I want to repeat this because the public apparently never believes it. Since I took office, we've cut our deficits by 2/3. The deficit has not been going up. It has been coming down precipitously. We've cut our deficits by 2/3. They're below the average deficits over the past 40 years. So the bottom line is Congress has to do its job. It can't flirt with another shutdown. It should pass a serious budget. And if they do, and get rid of some of these mindless cuts, even as we're still prudent about maintaining the spending that we need, but not spending we don't need, and it's not working, their own nonpartisan budget office estimates we're going to add an extra 500,000 jobs to our economy next year alone. We can immediately put 500,000 more people back to work if we just have a more sensible budget. And in these negotiations, nobody's going to get everything they want. We have to work together, though, even if we disagree, in order to do the people's business. At some point, we have to want to govern and not just play politics or play to various political bases. At some point, we need to pass bills so that we can rebuild our roads and keep our kids learning and keep our military strong and help people prepare for and recover from disasters. That is Congress's most basic job. That's what our government is supposed to do, serve the American people. So, with that, let me take some questions, and I'll start with Julie Pace of AP. Hang in there, kids.
It'll be over soon. Thank you, Mr. President. There have been several developments in Syria that I wanted to ask you about, starting with Russia's involvement. You met with President Putin earlier this week, and I wonder if you think he was honest with you about his intentions in Syria. If Russia is targeting groups beyond the Islamic State, including U.S.-aligned groups, does the U.S. military have an obligation to protect them? And on the situation in Syria more broadly, there have obviously been failures in the U.S. Train and Equip program. Do you believe that that program can be fixed, or do you have to look at other options? Would you in particular be willing to reconsider a no-fly zone, which several presidential candidates, including your former Secretary of State, are now calling for?
Well, first and foremost, let's understand what's happening in Syria and how we got here. What started off as peaceful protests against Assad, the president, evolved into a civil war because Assad met those protests with unimaginable brutality. And so this is not a conflict between the United States and any party in Syria. This is a conflict between the Syrian people and a brutal, ruthless dictator. Point number two is that the reason Assad is still in power is because Russia and Iran have supported him throughout this process. And in that sense, what Russia is doing now is not particularly different from what they had been doing in the past. They're just more overt about it. They've been propping up a regime that is rejected by an overwhelming majority of the Syrian population because they've seen that he has been willing to drop barrel bombs on children and on villages indiscriminately and has been more concerned about clinging to power than the state of his country. So in my discussions with President Putin, I was very clear that the only way to solve the problem in Syria is to have a political transition that is inclusive, that keeps the state intact, that keeps the military intact, that maintains cohesion, but that is inclusive, and the only way to accomplish that is for Mr. Assad to transition, because you cannot rehabilitate him in the eyes of Syrians. This is not a judgment I'm making. It is a judgment that the overwhelming majority of Syrians make. And I said to Mr. Putin that I'd be prepared to work with him if he is willing to broker with his partners, Mr. Assad and Iran, a political transition. We can bring the rest of the world community to a brokered solution, but that a military solution alone, an attempt by Russia and Iran to prop up Assad and try to pacify the population, is just going to get them stuck in a quagmire. And it won't work. And they will be there for a while if they don't take a different course. I also said to him that it is true that the United States and Russia and the entire world have a common interest in destroying ISIL. But what was very clear, and regardless of what Mr. Putin said, was that he doesn't distinguish between ISIL and a moderate Sunni opposition that wants to see Mr. Assad go. From their perspective, they're all terrorists. And that's a recipe for disaster, and it's one that I reject. So where we are now is that we are having technical conversations about deconfliction so that we're not seeing U.S. and American firefights in the air. But beyond that, we're very clear in sticking to our belief and our policy that the problem here is Assad and the brutality that he's inflicted on the Syrian people, and that it has to stop. And in order for it to stop, we're prepared to work with all the parties concerned, but we are not going to cooperate with a Russian campaign to simply try to destroy anybody who is disgusted and fed up with Mr. Assad's behavior. Keep in mind also from a practical perspective, the moderate opposition in Syria is one that, if we're ever going to have a political transition, we need. And the Russian policy is driving those folks underground or creating a situation in which they are decapacitated, and it's only strengthening ISIL. And that's not good for anybody. In terms of our support of opposition groups inside of Syria, I made very clear early on that the United States couldn't impose a military solution on Syria either, but that it was in our interest to make sure that we were engaged with moderate opposition inside of Syria, because eventually Syria will fall. The Assad regime will fall. And we have to have somebody who we're working with that we can help pick up the pieces and stitch back together a cohesive, coherent country. And so we will continue to support them. The Training and Equip program was a specific initiative by the Defense Department to see if we could get some of that moderate opposition to focus attention on ISIL in the eastern portion of the country. And I'm the first one to acknowledge it has not worked the way it was supposed to, Julie. And I think that the Department of Defense would say the same thing. And part of the reason, frankly, is because when we tried to get them to just focus on ISIL, the response we'd get back is, how can we focus on ISIL when every single day we're having barrel bombs and attacks from the regime? And so it's been hard to get them to reprioritize looking east when they've got bombs coming at them from the west. So what we're doing with the Train and Equip is looking at where we have had success, for example, working with some of the Kurdish community in the east that pushed ISIL out, seeing if we can build on that. But what we're also going to continue to do is to have contacts with and work with opposition that rightly believes, in the absence of some change in government inside of Syria, we're going to continue to see civil war, and that is going to turbocharge ISIL recruitment and jihadist recruitment, and we're going to continue to have problems. Now, last point I just want to make about this, because sometimes the conversation here in the Beltway differs from the conversation internationally. Mr. Putin had to go into Syria not out of strength, but out of weakness, because his client, Mr. Assad, was crumbling, and it was insufficient for him simply to send them arms and money. Now he's got to put in his own planes and his own pilots. And the notion that he put forward a plan and that somehow the international community sees that as viable because there's a vacuum there. I didn't see, after he made that speech in the United Nations, suddenly the 60-nation coalition that we have start lining up behind him. Iran and Assad make up Mr. Putin's coalition at the moment. The rest of the world makes up ours. So I don't think people are fooled by the current strategy. It does not mean that we could not see Mr. Putin begin to recognize that it is in their interests to broker a political settlement. And as I said in New York, we're prepared to work with the Russians and the Iranians, as well as our partners who are part of the anti-ISIL coalition, to come up with that political transition. And nobody pretends that it's going to be easy, but I think it is still possible. And so we will maintain lines of communication, but we are not going to be able to get those negotiations going if there's not a recognition that there's got to be a change in government. We're not going to go back to the status quo ante. And the kinds of airstrikes against moderate opposition that Russia is engaging in is going to be counterproductive. It's going to move us farther away rather than towards the ultimate solution that we all should be looking for.
Do you have any willingness to reconsider a no-fly zone?
Yeah, Julie, throughout this process, I think people have constantly looked for a easy, low-cost answer. Right? Whether it's we should have sent more rifles in early and somehow then everything would have been okay. Or if I had taken that shot even after Assad offered to give up his chemical weapons, then immediately things would have folded, or the Assad regime would have folded, and we would have suddenly seen a peaceful Syria. This is a hugely difficult, complex problem, and I would have hoped that we would have learned that from Afghanistan and Iraq, where we have devoted enormous time and effort and resources with the very best people, and have given the Afghan people and the Iraqi people an opportunity for democracy, but it's still hard, as we saw this week in Afghanistan. That's not by virtue of a lack of effort on our part or a lack of commitment. We've still got 10,000 folks in Afghanistan. We're still spending billions of dollars supporting that government, and it's still tough. So when I make a decision about the level of military involvement that we're prepared to engage in Syria, I have to make a judgment based on, once we start something, we got to finish it. And we've got to do it well. And do we in fact have the resources and the capacity to make a serious impact, understanding that we've still got to go after ISIL in Iraq. We still have to support the training of an Iraqi military that is weaker than any of us perceived, that we still have business to do in Afghanistan. And so I push and have consistently, over the last 4 or 5 years, sought out a wide range of opinions about steps that we can take potentially to move Syria in a better direction. I am under no illusions about what an incredible humanitarian catastrophe this is, and the hardships that we're seeing, and the refugees that are traveling in very dangerous circumstances, and now creating real political problems among our allies in Europe, and the heartbreaking images of children drowned trying to escape war, and the potential impact of such a destabilized country on our allies in the region. But what we have learned over the last 10, 12, 13 years is that unless we can get the parties on the ground to agree to live together in some fashion, then no amount of U.S. military engagement will solve the problem. And we will find ourselves either doing just a little bit and not making a difference and losing credibility that way, or finding ourselves drawn in deeper and deeper into a situation that we can't sustain. And when I hear people offering up half-baked ideas as if they are solutions, or trying to downplay the challenges involved in the situation, what I'd like to see people ask is specifically, precisely, what exactly would you do, and how would you fund it, and how would you sustain it? And typically, what you get is a bunch of mumbo jumbo. So these are hard challenges. They are ones that we are going to continue to pursue. The top line message that I want everybody to understand is we are going to continue to go after ISIL. We are going to continue to reach out to a moderate opposition. We reject Russia's theory that everybody opposed to Assad is a terrorist. We think that is self-defeating. It will get them into a quagmire. It will be used as a further recruitment tool for foreign fighters. We will work with the international community and our coalition to relieve the humanitarian pressure on refugees. We are working with the Turks and others to see what we can do along the border to make things safer for people. But ultimately, we're going to have to find a way for a political transition if we're going to solve Syria. Okay. John Carl.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Back in July, you said that the gun issue has been the most frustrating of your presidency, and we certainly heard that frustration from you last night.
Yep.
So in the last 15 months of your presidency, do you intend to do anything differently to get Congress to act or to do something about this gun violence problem? And I have to get you to respond to something that Jeb Bush just said. And to be fair to Governor Bush, I want to read it directly. Asked about the drive to take action in light of what happened in Oregon. He said, look, stuff happens. There's always a crisis, and the impulse is always to do something, and it's not always the right thing to do. How would you react to Governor Bush?
I don't even think I have to react to that one. I think the American people should hear that and make their own judgments based on the fact that every couple of months we have a mass shooting. And in terms of, and they can decide whether they consider that stuff happening. In terms of what I can do, I've asked my team, as I have in the past, to scrub what kinds of authorities do we have to enforce the laws that we have in place more effectively to keep guns out of the hands of criminals? Are there additional actions that we can take that might prevent even a handful of these tragic deaths from taking place? But, as I said last night, this will not change until the politics changes and the behavior of elected officials changes. And so the main thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about this on a regular basis. And I will politicize it because our inaction is a political decision that we are making. The reason that Congress does not support even the modest gun safety laws that we proposed after Sandy Hook is not because the majority of the American people don't support it. I mean, normally, politicians are responsive to the views of the electorate. Here you've got majority of the American people think it's the right thing to do. Background checks, other common sense steps that would maybe save some lives. Couldn't even get a full vote. And why is that? It's because of politics. It's because interest groups fund campaigns, feed people fear, and in fairness, it's not just in the Republican Party, although the Republican Party is just uniformly opposed to all gun safety laws. And unless we change that political dynamic, we're not going to be able to make a big dent in this problem. For example, you'll hear people talk about the problem's not guns, it's mental illness. Well, if you talk to people who study this problem, it is true that the majority of these mass shooters are angry young men, but there are hundreds of millions of angry young men around the world. Tens of millions of angry young men. Most of them don't shoot. It doesn't help us just to identify, and the majority of people who have mental illnesses are not shooters. So we can't sort through and identify ahead of time who might take actions like this. The only thing we can do is make sure that they can't have an entire arsenal when something snaps in them. And if we're going to do something about that, the politics has to change. the politics has to change. And the people who are troubled by this have to be as intense and as organized and as adamant about this issue as folks on the other side who are absolutists and think that any gun safety measures are somehow an assault on freedom or communistic, or a plot by me to, take over and stay in power forever or something. I mean, there are all kinds of crackpot conspiracy theories that float around there, some of which, by the way, are ratified by elected officials in the other party on occasion. So we've got to change. We've got to change the politics of this, and that requires people to feel, not just feel deeply, because I get a lot of letters after this happens. Do something. Well, okay. Here's what you need to do. You have to make sure that anybody who you are voting for is on the right side of this issue. And if they're not, even if they're great on other stuff, for a couple of election cycles, you got to vote against them and let them know precisely why you're voting against them. And you just have to, for a while, be a single issue voter, because that's what is happening on the other side. And that's going to take some time. I mean, the NRA has had a good start. They've been at this a long time. They've perfected what they do. You got to give them credit. They're very effective, because they don't represent the majority of the American people, but they know how to stir up fear. They know how to stir up their base. They know how to raise money. They know how to scare politicians. They know how to organize campaigns. The American people are going to have to match them in their sense of urgency if we're actually going to stop this. Which isn't to say stopping all violence. We're not going to stop all violence. Violence exists around the world, sadly. Part of original sin. But our homicide rates are just a lot higher than other places that, by the way, have the same levels of violence. It's just you can't kill as many people when you don't have easy access to these kinds of weapons. And I'm deeply saddened about what happened yesterday, but Arnie's going back to Chicago. Let's not forget, this is happening every single day in forgotten neighborhoods around the country. Every single day. Kids are just running for their lives trying to get to school. Broderick, we were down in New Orleans sitting down with a group of young men when we were talking about Katrina, and I've got two young men next to me. Both of them had been shot multiple times. They were barely 20. So we got to make a decision. If we think that's normal, then we have to own it. I don't think it's normal. I think it's abnormal. I think we should change it. But I can't do it by myself. So main thing I'm going to do, John, is talk about it. And hope that over time I'm changing enough minds, along with other leaders around the country, that we start finally seeing some action. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. Cheryl Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. President. To go back to your opening remarks, you said that you won't sign another short-term CR. But as you know, yesterday Secretary Lew announced that the government's borrowing authority would run out around November 5th. Would you recommend negotiating an increase in the debt ceiling as part of these budget negotiations on spending caps? And also, does the speaker's race complicate these negotiations?
I'm sure the speaker's race complicates these negotiations. That was a rhetorical question. It will complicate the negotiations, but when it comes to the debt ceiling, we're not going back there. Maybe it's been a while, so let me just refresh everybody's memory. Raising the debt ceiling does not authorize us to spend more. It simply authorizes us to pay the bills that we have already incurred. It is the way for the United States to maintain its good credit rating, the full faith and credit of the United States. Historically, we do not mess with it. If it gets messed with, it would have profound implications for the global economy and could put our financial system in the kind of tailspin that we saw back in 2007, 2008. It's just a bad thing to do. So we're not going to negotiate on that. It has to get done in the next 5 weeks. So even though the continuing resolution to keep the government open lasts for 10 weeks, we have to get the debt ceiling raised in 5. You've got a shorter timetable to get that done. But here's the bottom line. Mitch McConnell, John Boehner, myself, Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, we've all spoken and talked about trying to negotiate a budget agreement. And yes, Speaker Boehner's decision to step down complicates it, but I do think that there is still a path for us to come up with a reasonable agreement that raises the spending caps above sequester to make sure that we can properly finance both our defense and non-defense needs, that maintains a prudent control of our deficits, and that we can do that in short order. It's not that complicated. It's, there's the math is the math. And what I've encouraged is that we get started on that work immediately, and we push through over the next several weeks and try to leave out extraneous issues that may prevent us from getting a budget agreement. I know, for example, that there are many Republicans who are exercised about Planned Parenthood. And I deeply disagree with them on that issue. And I think that it's mischaracterized what Planned Parenthood does. But I understand that they feel strongly about it, and I respect that. But you can't have an issue like that potentially wreck the entire U.S. economy. Any more than I should hold the entire budget hostage to my desire to do something about gun violence. I feel just as strongly about that, and I think I've got better evidence for it. But the notion that I would threaten the Republicans that unless they passed gun safety measures that would stop mass shootings, I'm going to shut down the government and not sign an increase in the debt ceiling would be irresponsible of me. And the American people rightly would reject that. Well, same is true for them. There are some fights that we fight individually. They want to defund Planned Parenthood, there's a way to do it. Pass a law, override my veto. That's true across a whole bunch of issues that they disagree with me on. And that's how democracy works. I got no problem with that. But you have to govern. And I'm hoping that the next speaker understands that the problem Speaker Boehner had or Mitch McConnell had in not dismantling Obamacare or not eliminating the Department of Education or not deporting every immigrant in this country was not because Speaker Boehner or Mitch McConnell didn't care about conservative principles. It had to do with the fact that they can't do it in our system of government, which requires compromise. Just like I can't do everything I want in passing an immigration bill or passing a gun safety bill. And that doesn't mean that I throw a tantrum and try to wreck the economy and put hardworking Americans who are just now able to dig themselves out of a massive recession, put them in harm's way. Wrong thing to do. Peter Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. President. You addressed, I want to follow up on John's questions about the issue that's obviously deeply personal and moving to you, that is the gun issue. Apart from Congress's inaction, apart from the desire from new laws, and beyond that, apart from the gun lobby, as you noted, the pattern is that these perpetrators are angry, aggrieved, oftentimes mentally ill young men. Is there something that you can do with the bully pulpit, with your moral authority, with your remaining time in office, to help reach these individuals who believe that gun violence is the way out?
No. I think I can continue to speak to the American people as a whole and hopefully model for them basic social norms about rejecting violence and cooperation and caring for other people, but there are a lot of young men out there. And having been one myself once, I can tell you that us being able to identify or pinpoint who might have problems is extraordinarily difficult. So I think we as a culture should continuously think about how we can nurture our kids, protect our kids, talk to them about conflict resolution, discourage violence. I think there are poor communities where, rather than mass shootings, you're seeing just normal interactions that used to be settled by a fist fight, settled with guns, where maybe intervention programs and mentorship and things like that can work. That's the kind of thing that we're trying to encourage through My Brother's Keeper. But when it comes to reaching every disaffected young man, 99% of, or 99.9% of whom will hopefully grow out of it, I don't think that there's a silver bullet there. The way we are going to solve this problem is that when they act out, when they are disturbed, when that particular individual has a problem, that they can't easily access weapons that can perpetrate mass violence on a lot of people. Because that's what other countries do. Again, I want to emphasize this. There's no showing that somehow we are inherently more violent than any other advanced nation, or that young men are inherently more violent in our nation than they are in other nations. I will say young men inherently are more violent than the rest of the population. But there's no sense that somehow it's something in the American character that is creating this. Levels of violence are on par between the United States and other advanced countries. What is different is homicide rates and gun violence rates and mass shooting rates. So it's not that the behavior or the impulses are necessarily different as much as it is that they have access to more powerful weapons. Julie Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. President. You just said that you reject President Putin's approach to Syria and his attacks on moderate opposition forces. You said it was a recipe for disaster. But what are you willing to do to stop President Putin and protect moderate opposition fighters? Would you consider imposing sanctions against Russia? Would you go so far as to equip moderate rebels with anti-aircraft weapons to protect them from Russian air attacks? And how do you respond to critics who say Putin is outsmarting you, that he took a measure of you in Ukraine, and he felt he could get away with this?
Yeah, I've heard it all before. Thank you. I've got to say, I'm always struck by the degree to which not just critics, but I think people buy this narrative. Let's think about this. So when I came into office 7.5 years ago, America had precipitated the worst financial crisis in history, dragged the entire world into a massive recession. We were involved in 2 wars with almost no coalition support. U.S. World opinion about the United States was at a nadir. We were just barely above Russia at that time, and I think potentially slightly below China's. And we were shedding 800,000 jobs a month and so on and so forth. And today, we're the strongest large advanced economy in the world. Probably one of the few bright spots in the world economy. Our approval ratings have gone up. We are more active on more international issues and forge international responses to everything from Ebola to countering ISIL. Meanwhile, Mr. Putin comes into office at a time when the economy had been growing and they were trying to pivot to a more diversified economy. And as a consequence of these brilliant moves, their economy is contracting 4% this year. They are isolated in the world community, subject to sanctions that are not just applied by us, but by what used to be some of their closest trading partners. Their main allies in the Middle East were Libya and Syria, Mr. Gaddafi and Mr. Assad, and those countries are falling apart, and he's now just had to send in troops and aircraft in order to prop up this regime at the risk of alienating the entire Sunni world. So, what was the question again? No, but I think it's really interesting to understand. Russia's not stronger as a consequence of what they've been doing. They get attention. The sanctions against Ukraine are still in place. And what I've consistently offered, from a position of strength, because the United States is not subject to sanctions, and we're not contracting 4% a year, what I've offered is a pathway whereby they can get back onto a path of growth and do right by their people. So Mr. Putin's actions have been successful only insofar as it's boosted his poll ratings inside of Russia, which may be why the Beltway is so impressed, because that tends to be the measure of success. Of course, it's easier to do when you've got a state-controlled media. But this is not a smart strategic move on Russia's part. And what Russia's now done is not only committed its own troops into a situation in which the overwhelming majority of the Syrian population sees it now as an enemy, but the Sunni population throughout the Middle East is going to see it as a supporter, an endorser of those barrel bombs landing on kids. At a time when Russia has a significant Muslim population inside of its own borders that it needs to worry about. So I want Russia to be successful. This is not a contest between the United States and Russia. It is in our interest for Russia to be a responsible, effective actor on the international stage that can share burdens with us, along with China, along with Europe, along with Japan, along with other countries, because the problems we have are big. So I'm hopeful that Mr. Putin, having made this doubling down of the support he's provided to Mr. Assad, recognizes that this is not going to be a good long-term strategy, and that he works instead to bring about a political settlement, just as I hope that they can resolve the issues with Ukraine in a way that recognizes Russian equities but upholds the basic principle of sovereignty and independence that the Ukrainian people should enjoy like everybody else. But until that time, we're going to continue to have tensions and we're going to continue to have differences. But we're not going to make Syria into a proxy war between the United States and Russia. That would be bad strategy on our part. This is a battle between Russia, Iran, and Assad against the overwhelming majority of the Syrian people. Our battle is with ISIL, and our battle is with the entire international community to resolve the conflict in a way that can end the bloodshed and end the refugee crisis and allow people to be at home, work, grow food, shelter their children, send those kids to school. That's the side we're on. This is not some, superpower chessboard contest. And anybody who frames it in that way isn't paying very close attention to what's been happening on the chessboard. All right, last question, Major Garrett.
Mr. President, good to see you.
Good to see you.
And for the children there, I promise I won't take too long. So you've been very patient.
I've been boring them to death, I guarantee you. But there have been times where I've snagged rebounds for Ryan when he's shooting three-pointers, so he's got to put up with this.
Understand. Understood. Mr. President, I wonder if you could tell the country to what degree you were changed or moved by what you discussed in private with Pope Francis, what you think his visit might have meant for the country long term. And for Democrats who might already be wondering, is it too late for Joe Biden to decide whether or not to run for president? And lastly, just to clarify, to what degree did Hillary Clinton's endorsement just yesterday of a no-fly zone put her in a category of embracing a half-baked answer in Syria that borders on mumbo-jumbo?
On the latter issue, on the last question that you asked, Hillary Clinton is not half-baked in terms of her approach to these problems. She was obviously my Secretary of State. But I also think that there's a difference between running for president and being president. And the decisions that are being made and the discussions that I'm having with the Joint Chiefs become much more specific and require, I think, a different kind of judgment. And that's what I'll continue to apply as long as I'm here. And if and when she's president, then she'll make those judgments. And she's been there enough that she knows these are tough calls, but no, that's not what I said. That's perhaps what you said. What I'm saying is that we all want to try to relieve the suffering in Syria, but my job is to make sure that whatever we do, we are doing in a way that serves the national security interests of the American people, that doesn't lead to us getting into things that we can't get out of or that we cannot do effectively, and as much as possible that we're working with international partners. And we're going to continue to explore things that we can do to protect people and to deal with the humanitarian situation there and to provide a space in which we can bring about the kind of political transition that's going to be required to solve the problem. And I think Hillary Clinton would be the first to say that when you're sitting in the seat that I'm sitting in the Situation Room, things look a little bit different. Because she's been right there next to me. I love Joe Biden, and he's got his own decisions to make, and I'll leave it at that. And in the meantime, he's doing a great job as vice president and has been really helpful on a whole bunch of issues. Pope Francis, I love. He is a good man with a warm heart and a big moral imagination. And I think he had such an impact in his visit here as he's had around the world because he cares so deeply about the least of these, and in that sense expresses what I consider to be, as a Christian, the essence of Christianity. And he's got a good sense of humor. Well, I can't share all his jokes. They were all clean. And as I said in the introduction in the South Lawn when he appeared here at the White House, I think it's really useful that he makes us uncomfortable in his gentle way, that he's constantly prodding people's consciences and asking everybody all across the political spectrum what more you can do to be kind and to be helpful and to love and to sacrifice and to serve. And in that sense, I don't think he's somebody where we should be applying the typical American political measures, liberal and conservative and left and right. I think he is speaking to all of our consciences, and we all have to then search ourselves to see if there are ways that we can do better. It did. I think that when I spend time with somebody like the Pontiff, and there are other individuals, some of whom are famous, some of whom are not, but who are good people and deeply moral, then it makes me want to be better, makes me want to do better. And those people are great gifts to the world. And sometimes they're just a teacher in a classroom. And sometimes they're your neighbor. And sometimes they're your mom or your wife. Sometimes they're your kids. But they can encourage you to be better. That's what we're all trying to do. I think, and that's part of the wonderful thing about Pope Francis is the humility that he brings to this. His rejection of the absolutism that says, I'm 100% right and you're 100% wrong, but rather we are all sinners and we are all children of God, and that's a pretty good starting point for being better. All right? Thank you guys for your patience. You can now go home. All right. Thanks.
All right, guys, that is a wrap on President Obama's news conference.
I hear you great.
Very lengthy, but it looks like he took a lot of questions from reporters, gave us a lot of answers. That being said, that is a wrap on the morning edition of FOX10 News Now. We will be kicking off the afternoon edition of News Now in less than 10 minutes. Make sure to go find that feed, and we will see you guys there momentarily.